The cold hit the back of my neck before anybody else in that gymnasium felt anything. It was the kind of cold that comes off a walk-in freezer when somebody opens the door behind you. My arms went to gooseflesh. The hair on my neck stood up and stayed up. And the weird part was that nothing in the room had changed. 600 kids were still packed onto the bleachers of Shihai No. 1 Middle School, still sweating through their uniforms, still elbowing each other over who was going to draw something cool. The banner over the stage still said, "Congratulations on your job change," in letters somebody had clearly cut out with scissors the night before. The magic circle in the middle of the floor was still glowing that friendly, harmless gold, like a nightlight. And I was standing in line for my turn, with ice water running down my spine. Quick version of the world, because you need it. Monsters showed up a long time ago and never left. At 18, you step into a circle like that one, and the circle tells you what you are, and that is the rest of your life. Farmer, chef, blacksmith, or, if the dice like you, something that can actually fight. You do not choose, you get told. Running the circle was a man in dark robes who had not blinked all morning. A Raymaster Chen Wei, level 52, flown in from the provincial capital, which is like having a heart surgeon show up to take your temperature. The girl 3 places ahead of me was crying because she got Taylor. Next, Li Ming. Li Ming stepped in with his chest out. Light climbed him and set, and when it cleared, there was a shield the size of a manhole cover hovering over his shoulder. "Advanced sword and shield knight," said Chen Wei, and even he sounded pleased, which from that man is a standing ovation. 600 people screamed. His mother was already on the phone, sobbing the words "advanced" and "knight" into it. Advanced combat class in a coastal town nobody has heard of gets you a scholarship and a nickname. I was happy for him. I also noticed the cold had gotten worse. Next, Mei Ling. Mei Ling did not walk up. She strolled. Her family owned enough of the waterfront that the waterfront owned nothing back, and she had spent 3 years being the best tutored person in every room she entered, and she stepped into that circle with the expression of a customer. The light came up. 2 fireballs the size of apples popped into existence over her palms and sat there, turning. The gym went quiet in the wrong way. 2 effects at once on a first draw does not happen. "Anomaly," said Chen Wei, and for the first time all morning he leaned forward. "Rare combat class. Elemental mage." That got a bigger scream than Li Ming, because rare beats advanced, and rare means the province writes your name down. She stepped out, dusted off a sleeve with nothing on it, and walked straight past the seats to where I was standing in line. "Jian Yu." "Congratulations." "I'm not here for that." She looked up at me. She had to, which annoyed her permanently, and her chin came out. "You've been first in our year on paper since we were 15. On paper. Paper's over today." She jabbed a finger into my chest, and it actually hurt because she had 30% more strength than she had 90 seconds ago and had not adjusted. "Whatever you draw, I won't lose to you. Compare scores at the grade exam. Say yes." "Yes." She waited. I think she was expecting more. "That's it?" "That's it." "Unbelievable," she said, and went back to her seat to be admired. Next, Jian Yu. I walked into the circle, and the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees at once. Somebody in the front row screamed. The gold light under my feet went out like someone had cut a wire. Then the ceiling of that gymnasium was not a ceiling anymore. It was sky. Black, boiling sky, and the clouds in it were full of skulls, and the skulls were on fire, and they were all turning very slowly to look at me. The wind came next. Not gym wind, graveyard wind, the kind that comes up out of the ground in November and smells like wet stone and old flowers. It blew the banner off the wall. It blew the scissors-cut letters across the floor. 600 kids stopped screaming and started climbing over each other away from the circle. And I want to be clear about the direction there. Away from the circle meant away from me. Chen Wei was on his feet with both hands up, holding something invisible together. His sleeves were snapping like flags. And while all of that was happening in the gymnasium, I was somewhere else. I was standing in a field under that same black, boiling sky, and in front of me there was a man in a mage's robe with his back turned, and in front of him there were skeletons. Not 4, not 40, the number where your eye gives up and your brain files it under weather. They went to the horizon in ranks with the wind coming through them, and at the very front of them something enormous was screaming and thrashing and losing, and it took me an embarrassingly long time to work out what it was because I had never seen a dragon from above before. Then it stopped. All of it, at once, and the ceiling was a ceiling again, with a water stain in the corner shaped like a duck. Something had settled into me, not into my hands, into the part of me that decides things. I knew, the way you know your own phone number, what I could do. Unique, Chen Wei said, into perfect silence. Hidden class. He said the next word slowly, because I do not think he had ever said it out loud before. Necromancer. Nobody clapped. I have thought about that a lot since. Not one person clapped. Rare classes got a scream. Advanced got a scream. I got a hidden class. One tier above rare, and rare enough that the man running the circle had to reach for the word. And 600 people I had gone to school with for 3 years shuffled 6 inches further up the bleachers and looked at me like I had brought a knife to a birthday party. In the 3rd row, somebody said the word cursed, not quietly. 2 rows over, a girl I had lent notes to for a year made a warding sign at me with her fingers, the little folk one grandmothers do, and then noticed me noticing and pretended to fix her hair. Cool, very cool, love that for me. And here's the part nobody on those bleachers knew, which is why the shuffling mattered. My grandmother had been dead 2 years. My sister Manhwa left for Xiajing Academy a year before that, and the last time she called, 3 months ago, she said she was fine, and the line cut out. The house I was going home to that afternoon had 4 rooms, 3 of them empty, 1 photograph on the wall, and a hole in the roof over the kitchen that I had been patching with a tarp and increasingly creative optimism. Whatever that circle gave me was never going to be a career. It was going to be a job. I needed it to be a job that paid, in a town where the only people hiring look at the word on your certificate and then look at your face. 600 people had just decided what the word on mine was worth. Chen Wei came down off the stage. Up close, he had the eyes of a man who has personally watched a lot of things die. You, he said, summon it. Here? Here. So I did the thing I now knew how to do, and about 4 meters from a bleacher full of teenagers, the air went cold again and a skeleton stood up out of nothing. It was not a good skeleton. I need to be honest about this because it matters later. My first skeleton warrior looked like something you would assemble in a junkyard with a bad attitude and no instructions. The bones were gray and pitted. One arm was visibly a different length from the other. In the sockets where eyes go, 2 little flames the color of bad milk flickered and guttered like a lighter running out. It held a greatsword that was mostly rust and confidence. It creaked when it breathed, which is a strange sentence because it did not breathe. 15 strength. 15 agility, 15 constitution, 15 spirit. Those are not the numbers of a weapon. Those are the numbers of a large, disappointing dog. The whole gym exhaled at once. You could hear the relief. Cursed, but harmless. Terrible sky, terrible smell, and out of all of it, a dead man with a rust sword and osteoporosis. Chen Wei did not exhale. He walked a slow circle around my skeleton, and then he did something with 2 fingers, a probe, a little needle of pressure, the way a doctor presses a bruise to see if you flinch. My skeleton turned its head and looked at him, not at where the probe came from, at him, and it shifted its weight onto its back foot and brought the rust sword up about 2 inches, and the little milk-colored flames in its sockets stopped guttering and burned flat and steady. Chen Wei's hand stopped in midair. For about 3 seconds, nobody in that building moved, and I stood there next to my rusty junkyard skeleton with 15 in every stat, feeling the 2 of us being looked at by a man who could have leveled the school. He put his hand down, he straightened his sleeve, and then he said, in a voice I could not read at all, "Interesting." Then he told me to put it away. I did not know how to put it away. I want to be clear that at that moment I had owned a class for approximately 90 seconds and nobody had explained anything, and I was standing in front of 600 people with a dead man I did not know how to switch off. So I thought at it the way you think at your own hand, and something opened. That is the summoning space, and it is the second thing about my class that nobody outside it understands. It is not a bag, it is not a stable. It is a place that is attached to me, that I cannot go into. where my summons exist when they are not standing in the world. They do not stop existing when I dismiss them. They wait. They heal in there. That is the part that mattered later. And they come back when I want them, in the condition I last left them, plus whatever they have mended. My skeleton went out of the gymnasium like a candle going out, and the temperature came back up, and 600 people started breathing again. The ceremony went on. The next kid drew chef. Here is what nobody in that gymnasium knew, including me, for about 11 more hours. The vision was not decoration. The circle showed me an army that goes to the horizon and a dragon dying on top of it. Then it showed everybody else a rusty junkyard skeleton with 15 in every column, and 600 people believed the second one. And I want to be fair to them, because so did I. I walked home past the seafood market with my certificate rolled up in my fist. My classmates gave me room on the sidewalk. Somebody's mother pulled her kid across the street. And I remember thinking, with absolutely no irony at all, well, at least nobody's going to try to mug me. Mei Ling caught me at the school gate. Necromancer, she said. Yes. Nobody has heard of it. No. Which means nobody knows what it's worth. She had her arms crossed, and she was doing that thing with her jaw. So the great exam still stands. You don't get out of it by drawing something weird. Compare scores. At the exam. You already said that. I'm saying it again so you can't pretend you didn't hear it. She marched off. That was, I want to note, the second time in one day that somebody had specifically promised to beat me at something. Both of those got settled eventually. Only one of them got settled the same week. The house was exactly as I left it. I want to describe it accurately and not pathetically because it was not a pathetic house, it was just an empty one. 4 rooms, concrete floor, swept, a stove with 2 burners, one working, a tarp over the kitchen where the roof had a hole, weighted with a brick and a paint can, and on the wall, 1 photograph in a frame with a crack across the glass of a woman with iron gray hair standing behind 2 kids in matching sandals, a girl with her chin up, and a boy who was not looking at the camera. Grandmother had been gone 2 years. The girl in the photo had been gone 1. That was the entire population of the house, historically, and now it was down to the kid who wouldn't look at the camera. I put my certificate on the table. I put a pot on the working burner. In the pot, I put 3 sweet potatoes because sweet potatoes were 9 coins for a sack the size of a pillow's, and the sack lasted 11 days, and I had done that math often enough to have opinions about it. Somebody knocked. Principal Song Hai was standing in my doorway in the same generous suit, holding a stacked lunch tin with both hands like it might go off. I made too much, he said. He had not made too much. Principal Song Hai had been making too much roughly twice a week for 2 years, and the man was over 60 and lived alone, and every single time he arrived with an alibi about portion sizes. This time it was braised pork, greens, rice, and 4 eggs, which for a man who had made too much showed an unusual understanding of what a teenage boy eats. He set it down on my table next to the certificate, and then he looked at the certificate, and his hands went still. Hidden class, he said. He said it like a man tasting something. In 40 years, I have presided over this ceremony 31 times, and I have seen 2 rare classes and no hidden classes. None. Not one. Everybody thinks it's cursed. Everybody in that gymnasium, Principal Song Hai said, was also frightened of the number 0 for about 800 years. He straightened up. You are going to Xiajing Academy. That is the top academy in the Shenxia Empire. That is where the country keeps the people it intends to build its future out of. It takes about 150 kids a year off a national exam, and it is thousands of kilometers from my kitchen, and my sister had walked through its gate a year ago and stopped answering her phone. Yes, I said, that's the plan. He looked at me for a second longer than he needed to. Then he told me to eat the eggs while they were warm, and he left, and closed my door behind him carefully, the way you close a door in a house where somebody is sick. I ate the eggs. Then I sat on the edge of my bed and got out the thing I had not shown anybody. At the bottom of the certificate scroll, in the little pocket where the wax seal sits, there had been a gemstone, small, red, about the size of a knuckle. It had not been mentioned in the ceremony. It had not been mentioned by Chen Wei. Nobody else in that line had one because I had watched every single kid unroll their certificate, and I am the type to check. I turned it over in my fingers, and it went warm, and then it went soft, and then it was gone. Not dropped, absorbed, straight through the skin like water into a sponge. And something in my head cleared its throat and started reading me my own future. I will not do the panel thing. I hate the panel thing. Here is what it meant. First, a talent. Talents are not skills. A skill is a thing you can do. A talent is a thing you are, permanently, and roughly one professional in a million wakes up with one. Mine was called comprehensive amplification, and what it did was take every skill I would ever learn and multiply it by 10. 10. Not 10%. 10 times. Range, duration, damage, the number of things I could raise out of the ground, all of it, across the board, forever, and upgrading as I did. Second, a passive, and this one I sat with for a while. Damage transfer. Any injury that lands on me gets handed to my summons instead. Not reduced, moved. If something hits me hard enough to end a conversation, the conversation continues and a skeleton somewhere quietly comes apart. I sat on my bed in a house with a hole in the roof and did the arithmetic 3 times. That junkyard skeleton with 15 in every stat, the one that made a gymnasium sigh with relief. Take the 15s and multiply by 10 and add the class scaling, and you do not have 15s anymore. You have 150 in every column. At that age, in that province, 150 in every column is not a large, disappointing dog. It is the strongest thing for 40 kilometers in any direction, and I could make more of them, and anything that tried to hurt me would be hurting them instead. I summoned it again, right there in my kitchen, and the two of us stood in the dark looking at each other. Gray-pitted bones, mismatched arms, rust sword. 2 little flames burning flat and steady now, not guttering at all. Sorry about earlier, I said. They didn't know. It creaked. Then I went and stood under the tarp where the roof was open and looked up through the hole at the actual sky, which was clear, with no skulls in it whatsoever. Jiajing Academy. Thousands of kilometers. 1 national exam. 1 sister who had stopped picking up the phone. All right, I said out loud, to nobody in an empty house. Let's go get you. The bus to the beginner dungeon left at 6 in the morning and smelled like 40 people's breakfast. That is the next step for everybody, by the way. Job change. Then the school takes you to a low-level dungeon and stands outside it while you find out whether you are a professional or just a person with a certificate. There is an entire industry built on beginner dungeons. They are stable, the monsters cap at level 5, and nothing in one has ever killed a supervised child, which, as advertising goes, is not nothing. I sat at the back. Nobody sat next to me, which meant I got 2 seats, which meant I slept, so as social punishments go, it was poorly designed. Principal Song Hai rode up front with the principals from the other 2 district schools, and I could hear every word of it for 90 minutes, because 60-year-old educators on a field trip have no volume control whatsoever. An advanced knight, Principal Song Hai was saying, and a rare elemental mage, in 1 morning, in 1 class. You had a good year, Elder Song. I had a historic year. You had a lucky year. Luck, said Principal Song Hai, in the voice he used on parents, is what people call other schools' results. A pause, and then, because he could not help himself, and a hidden class. The bus got quieter. The dead one? Said the principal from the 3rd district. I heard about the dead one. I heard the whole gym cleared out. They did not clear out. My colleague's daughter was in that gym. She said the sky opened, and there were skulls in it. The sky did open, Principal Song Hai said, with enormous dignity. And then it closed, and the young man produced a summon, and everything was fine. There was a silence of precisely the right length to be insulting. 15s, said the other principal, eventually. I heard it rolled 15s. It is a new class. Nobody knows the scaling. Elder Song, 15s. I looked out the window at the sea going past and kept my mouth shut, which is the one thing I have always been world class at. Here is what a beginner dungeon looks like from the outside. A hole in a hillside with a stone arch around it, a permanent guard booth, a queue, and about 300 parents behind a rope. Somebody sells fried bread. Somebody else sells cheap bronze knives to 18-year-olds who have watched too many recordings. Li Ming found me while I was reading the rules board. He had bought a shield overnight. He had also bought a cape, which nobody has ever needed. Jian the Steadfast. Team up. He was practically vibrating. 3-person minimum on normal difficulty, so it's you, me, and Mei Ling, and I go first, obviously, because I'm the tank, and you can be... He stopped and looked at me, sizing up what a necromancer contributes to a party, and I watched him fail to find a word. Support. No. What do you mean no? I mean no. You need a healer at minimum, he said, offended on my behalf. Everybody needs a healer. That's not an opinion. That's the shape of the world. He turned around and started shouting into the queue. Healer! We need 1 healer. Anybody. Free split. 2 came over. 2 looked at me. What's your class? The first one asked. Necromancer. The pause was long enough to have a name. He's the one from the ceremony, the second one said. That's the one who did the sky. I'm not going into a hole in the ground with the sky guy. It's not the sky, I said. It's a skeleton. One skeleton. I would honestly rather it was the sky, she said, and they both left, quickly, the way you leave a conversation with a man who has started explaining his diet. Li Ming stared after them and then rounded on me like I had done it deliberately. Do you see? Do you see what you have done to my party composition? Mei Ling was 15 meters away, pretending not to listen and doing a terrible job of it. She came over with her hands behind her back. Jian Yu. Yes. Race me. She held up her wrist, where a communicator worth more than our house was blinking. In and out. Whoever's higher when they walk out of that hole wins. No time limit, no rules, no excuses. Okay. She waited. She had clearly prepared more. You always say okay, she said, with real frustration. Do you actually understand what a race is? Yes. Then say something competitive. Okay. Mei Ling made a noise and went to find her hired party, which had been standing off to the side the entire time, trying not to look expensive. I went to the guard booth and signed the solo waiver. The guard read it, read me, and put the pen down. Kid, 3-person minimum is not a suggestion. It's a recommendation for normal difficulty, and a waiver exists, I said. That's why there's a form. Why is there always one? Said the guard to the ceiling, and stamped it. The moment I stepped through the arch, the noise of 400 people cut out like a door closing on a room. A beginner dungeon is a cave. Wet rock, moss on the walls doing the lighting in that flat green that makes everybody look ill, and water somewhere behind everything. Slimes at 3, giant rats at 4, big armored beetles at 5. Nothing in there could have hurt a determined toddler with a stick. I summoned 4 skeletons and gave them one instruction. Go. Here is the part of my class that took me 6 minutes to understand and took the rest of the country about 6 months. My skeletons are not pets. I do not steer them. I do not have to look at them. I set an intention and every one of them runs it in parallel, independently, and what they find comes back to me, not as words, as knowledge, the way you know where the furniture is in a dark room in your own house. I stood in the entry chamber with my hands in my pockets and watched a floor plan draw itself behind my eyes while 4 gray figures with rust swords fanned out into the dark and began industrializing a cave. Chamber. Tunnel. Tunnel. Dead end with a slime in it. Chamber with 6 rats. Water. Chamber. I did not walk anywhere for the first hour. I sat on a rock at the entrance and ate a sweet potato and watched a map assemble itself. And every kill fed me, and this is where it got interesting. Because I sat on that rock and worked out the shape of my own life. Summoning a skeleton costs spirit. Killing things gives experience. Experience gives levels. Levels give spirit. Spirit buys skeletons. Skeletons kill things. I sat in the dark with a half-eaten sweet potato and laughed out loud in an empty cave. Because there is no exit from that loop. It does not have a top. Every other professional in the world levels by getting personally better at fighting. I level by getting bigger. 4 skeletons became 8 in the first hour. 8 became 16 in the second. 16 skeletons at 150 in every column cleared that entire beginner dungeon faster than I could walk between the rooms. So, I stopped walking between the rooms and let the map come to me. Level 1 to level 5 in about 4 hours. I want that number to land properly, so here's the context the guard gave me on the way in, unprompted, because he gives it to everybody. The record for this dungeon, in the history of this dungeon, was level 5 in 12 hours, and it was set by somebody's older brother who had been dining out on it locally ever since. I hit 5 at 4 hours, and then I hit a wall, because there was nothing left in the front 2/3 of the cave that gave me anything. So I went to the back, where the trees were. Whiplash trees, level 8, 3 above me and 3 above anything else that dungeon had, sitting in a chamber at the end of a long tunnel that a normal beginner party would take one look at, say absolutely not, and go home from. The dungeon puts them there on purpose. It is the little joke at the end of the tutorial. Here is my problem with them, and it is the only real limit I have. My skeletons only work within 500 meters of me. Past that, the leash pulls and they come home. So I could not send 16 skeletons down a tunnel to fight level 8s while I sat safely on a rock. To farm that chamber, I had to be in that chamber. The first one got me across the shoulder before I even registered it as a plant. A branch like a bullwhip out of a wall of leaves, faster than anything with roots has any right to be. I felt the wind of it on my face. I heard it land. There was a rip down the front of my school shirt, and I did not feel it land. Somewhere behind me in the dark, a skeleton took the entire blow and staggered, and I stood there looking at a torn shirt with no scratch under it, and the tree wound up for a second, and my whole body was telling me to move, and my brain was very slowly saying, wait. I let it hit me again. Nothing. Wind, noise, cloth. A crack behind me. Damage transfer. I want to describe how that feels from the inside because I have had it explained to me since by extremely educated people, and every one of them got it slightly wrong. It does not feel like armor. Armor you feel. Armor is a push. This feels like a clerical error. It feels like the universe writing your injury down under somebody else's name and moving on with its day. I stood in that chamber for an hour and let 12 trees hit me approximately 200 times. Trees are not smart. They never adapted. Every single lash landed. Every single lash got filed to somebody else, and my 16 employees took a 200-strike beating in total silence because they cannot complain and because they were healing in my summoning space faster than the trees could work. I cleared that chamber. Then I found a second one further back and cleared that. And somewhere in the middle of the second chamber, standing in a cave being whipped by vegetation and feeling nothing, I understood what I actually am. Every other professional in the world has the same shape of problem. They have a number, and the world has numbers, and progress means finding fights where your number is slightly bigger and grinding until it grows. A level 7 fights level 8s carefully. A level 7 fights a level 12 never. I am not shaped like that. I do not have a number that fights. I have a number that decides how many things fight for me, and a passive that files my injuries under their names, and a talent that multiplies whatever I learn by 20. The only question that has ever mattered for me is whether there are enough of them and whether the fight is inside 500 meters. Which means I do not have a level, I have a logistics problem. I sat down in a cave full of dead trees and worked out that if that was true, then the fastest thing in the world for me is not a better skill. It is a place where a great many things want to come to me in a confined space. I did not have a name for that yet. 2 weeks later, somebody handed me one on a scroll. Then I walked out because there was nothing left in there to kill. 10 hours. Daylight hit me like a slap. 400 people, 3 principals, a rope line of parents, and 1 Mei Ling standing at the front with her arms crossed and her hired party nowhere in sight. Principal Song Hai got to me first and started patting me down like a customs officer. Are you hurt? Why are you out? What happened to your shirt? Did you at least clear the entry chamber? There's nothing left. Nothing left of what? Of the dungeon. He stopped patting. You cannot clear a beginner dungeon in 10 hours, he said, in the careful voice of a man explaining gravity. The population regenerates from the deep end while you work the shallow end. That is the entire design. You always leave something behind. That is why it is a renewable. Once they're all killed, I said, they come out. He looked at me for 3 seconds. Then, he did the thing principals do, which is trust paperwork over their own ears, and ran a detection on me in front of 400 people. He went completely still. Elder Song, said the 3rd district principal. Elder Song, what does it say? 7, said Principal Song Hai. The whole slope went quiet. 7 what? Level 7. His voice was climbing an octave per word. Level 7. In 10 hours. In a beginner dungeon. The record is 5 and 12. The record has stood for 11 years. The record was set by a boy who is now a minor celebrity in this district. Elder Song, your face is doing the thing. The record is now level 7 in 10 hours. I did not enjoy the following 10 minutes. There is nothing to enjoy about being surrounded by adults who have decided you are a phenomenon. One man wanted to see the skeleton. Another man very much did not want to see the skeleton, and said so at length. A woman I had never met tried to hand me a business card for a guild in the provincial capital, and Principal Song Hai took the card, tore it in half, and gave both halves back to her, which I think about sometimes when I am in a bad mood, and it always helps. Somewhere in that 10 minutes, I noticed that clan leader Mei Guozhi had arrived. He had not come to the rope line. He was sitting at a folding tea table 30 meters up the slope with a flask and 4 cups, and at some point during the afternoon, the 3 principals had drifted up there and joined him, and I understood, watching Principal Songhai accept a cup, that the tea table was not hospitality, it was recruitment. The Mei clan runs half the waterfront, and it pays attention to the year's crop, and the man had come out personally to sit in the sun and be told which children were worth money. He was looking at me over the rim of the cup, and he did not look away when I noticed, and that told me everything about the Mei family I needed for the next 4 years. Mei Ling came out of the dungeon 40 minutes later. She came out filthy. Hair stuck to her forehead, soot up one sleeve, a burn on her wrist she had not bothered to have healed, and absolutely radiant because she had done something enormous, and she knew it. She got to the top of the ramp and put her wrist up over her head like a fighter. 5, she announced to everybody, level 5, in 10 hours. And she deserved that. I wanted in the record. 5 in 10 hours at 18 in a party in a beginner dungeon is a genuinely excellent result. And there were people on that slope who had trained their whole lives to be that good on their best day. She was grinning at me with her chin out. Beat that, Gian the Steadfast. 400 people had already heard my number. Nobody wanted to be the person who said it. Principal Songhai cleared his throat. I watched it land on her. She looked at the principal's faces first, and then at the crowd, and then at mine, and I watched the grin come off her the way paint comes off in rain. Say it, she said. 7. Mei Ling did not scream. She did not accuse me of cheating, and she did not cry, and a lot of people in her position would have picked one of those, and I have thought about that since. She stood in the wind off the water with her hands at her sides for about 4 seconds. 10 hours, she said. 10 hours. The same 10 hours. Yes, she nodded slowly, filed something away somewhere permanent, and walked past me to the buses. Her father was waiting at the car. That surprised me. He held the door for her himself, which for a man like that is a statement, and I was close enough to hear the offer. I will hire you a full escort, he said. Level 30s, 4 of them, standing contract. You will never be behind anyone again. No. It is not charity, it is efficiency. I said no. Mei Ling got in and pulled the door shut with her own hand. The next morning, Li Ming turned up at my house at 6 with the shield, the cape, and a paper bag of buns ready to be my tank. I had left at 4. The Shenxia Empire Exchange in West Sea City is a big stone building where you can sell a monster and buy a sword, and it is the first place any new professional goes, and it is designed from the floor up to take money off children. I spent a morning learning it. The recycling counter buys materials by weight and tells you the price is fixed, which is a lie, but it is a small enough lie that arguing costs more than it saves. The equipment counter buys gear at about 1/3 of what it resells for. The potion shelf has basic healing and basic mana at 1,000 gold a bottle, both on a 1-hour cooldown, which means the shelf is not really selling healing, it is selling 1 mistake per hour. And on the wall there is a board where people post work. I read the whole board, twice. Most of it was escort jobs, herb collection, and one very sad notice about a missing dog. One posting had been up long enough that the paper had gone yellow at the corners, and somebody had pinned it back up in a different place. Wanted, Goblin King Crystal Core, West Sea Mine, 100,000 gold, Dynasty Guild. 100,000 gold is a life-changing amount of money to a person who buys sweet potatoes by the sack. It is a house. It is a roof with no hole in it. That number is also, I found out later, the funniest thing I encountered that entire year, and I will come back to it. And when I do, I would like you to remember that it was pinned to a public wall in a government building. I sold what I had. I bought nothing, because 2 potions is 2,000 gold, and 2,000 gold is 4 months of eating, and I walked out the city gate. The guard actually came out of his booth for me. Kid. Yes? That gate is for parties. Out there is level 10s and up, and past the ridge it is level 20s, and there is nothing out there for a 9 but a shallow grave that he digs himself over about 4 hours. Yes? So why are you walking out of it? Because there's nothing in here. He looked at me for a while. He was maybe 40, and he had the arms of a man who had done actual work before he got a booth. There's a body cart comes Thursdays, he said. If you're not back by then, I'll tell them your name. I want to be fair to him. He tried, and he was the only one who did. The first thing that came at me outside the wall was a goblin scout, level 10, all elbows and knife, screaming down a slope with about 10 friends behind it. It was the first monster I had ever fought that was above my level. It got 6 meters. 28 skeletons had walked out that gate with me. 40 walked away from that slope because I had gone up 2 levels standing still, and that is the loop I was living in. The world sends things to kill me, the things become levels, the levels become more of the things that killed them. There is a philosopher out there somewhere who could make that sound profound. To me, it sounded like a wage. I killed goblins for 2 days. Then I killed the things that were eating the goblins. I hit level 10 at the bottom of a dry creek bed with green blood up to my knees, and my talent upgraded, times 20, not 10, 20. Everything I had, everything I would ever have, doubled again in a single step, and I understood standing in that creek that it was going to keep doing this, that the multiplier was not a number I had been given, but a number I was growing, and my skeletons changed with it. They went dark. The gray, pitted junkyard bone went dense and smooth, and took on a shine like old coins underwater. The mismatched arms matched. The rust came off the swords in flakes, and what was under it was not rust-colored at all. 40 bronze skeleton warriors stood up in that creek bed with 3,000 in every column, and the temperature dropped so hard the water at my feet fogged. 3,000, at level 10. In a province where the strongest human being I had ever personally been in a room with was a level 52 array master, and where the Mei clan's best fighter was a 30. They also learned a skill, which I did not expect. Berserk Strike. 4 times strength in one swing, and when 40 of them do it together, the noise is less like combat and more like a scheduled demolition. I spent the rest of that day finding out what I had. First, I tested the range, because the range is the only thing about me that has ever been a real problem. I sent one skeleton away from me in a straight line down the creek bed and walked in the opposite direction, and at 500 meters exactly something in my chest went tight, and the skeleton stopped where it was and turned around and came back at a run. It does not ask permission. The leash is not a rule I follow, it is a piece of anatomy. 500 meters. My entire empire fits inside a 10-minute walk. Then I tested how many I could hold at once, which is a spirit question, and the answer was more than I could afford to summon in a day. Then I did something I had been putting off, which was to find out what happens if I get hit properly. I stood in the open on a goblin trail and let one come at me. Level 10, screaming, knife first, and I did not move, and it opened my sleeve and I felt the tug of cloth going and absolutely nothing else, and behind me a skeleton took a knife wound in the ribs it did not have. Then I let a second one hit me at the same time as the first. 2 skeletons flinched. I want to explain what I was actually doing there, because from outside it looks like a boy standing still while monsters stab him, which is fair. What I was measuring was the split. 1 blow, 1 skeleton. 2 blows, 2 skeletons. It shares out by injury, not by fraction, and the more skeletons I have standing, the thinner any single hit lands. Which meant the answer to being fragile was not armor, it was head count. I killed goblins for 2 days after that, and I did not do it efficiently. I did it methodically, and I ate 2 sweet potatoes a day, and I slept 4 hours at a time with skeletons standing around me in a ring, and by the end of the second day, I understood my own class better than anybody in my province did, because nobody in my province had ever seen one. The second night, I sat with my back to a rock and looked at 40 sets of soul flames in the dark, and had a thought I have never gotten rid of. They do not sleep, they do not eat, they do not get bored, and they do not get frightened, and they never once, in everything that came after, hesitated at anything I pointed them at. I have been called a lot of things since. Monster is the most common one, and it is usually said about them. They are the most reliable thing in my life. I should flag something here, because I know exactly how this reads, and because a great many people would eventually ask me the same question, usually while backing away. If the loop has no top, why not sit in a hole and farm until the numbers eat the sky? Because of the leash. 500 meters. My entire empire fits inside a 10-minute walk, and outside that circle, I am an 18-year-old with a spirit stat and the upper body of a boy who has been living on root vegetables. Everything I have done since, every wall of bone, every corpse thrown, every insane thing you are about to hear about, has been one long argument with that 500 meters. 2 days later, an arrow went past my ear. Then a second one hit me in the chest, and I noticed it the way you notice weather. There was a woman running through the scrub about 80 meters out, black clothes, hood up, bleeding from somewhere I could not see, moving like somebody who had been moving for a very long time. Behind her, 3 people were doing the thing hunters do when the deer is tired. An archer, loosing on the move. A mage, walking, not running, saving everything. and a knight out wide on the flank, cutting her angles down one at a time. The woman in black went over a ridge and out of sight, and the three of them came through my clearing at a jog. The mage looked at me. Skinny kid, standing in the open, no weapon, no armor, one skeleton. Move. I moved. They went past. The archer's next shot went wide of the ridge and past my head again, and I stood there in the dust and thought about how close that had been to being my problem. Consider yourselves lucky, I said to their backs. I have no idea if they heard me. I said it mostly for me. It is the most expensive sentence anybody said out loud in that forest, and it was not expensive for me. That night, I made camp, which meant sitting with my back to a rock with two skeletons standing in the dark like coat racks and 3 sweet potatoes going soft in the ashes. Somebody dropped out of the tree above me. Are those sweet potatoes? She landed without a sound, which I want to note because I did not hear a person hit the ground from 4 meters up until she chose to be heard. Small, fast-looking, black hood down around her shoulders now, dried blood on one sleeve, not hers, 2 daggers on her belt that were worth more than my house and the land under it. They're hot, I said. She sat down and ate 2 of them before she said another word. And she ate the way you eat when you have been running for a day and a half and lying to yourself about not being hungry. Liu Jia, she said with her mouth full. Jian Yu, you're the one who didn't move. I moved. You moved after. She licked her thumb. Everybody moves before. Why are you out here alone at level 9? I'm out here alone at level 11. That is worse. That is so much worse. Then she looked past me at my skeletons, and then she looked at them again properly. The second look, the slow one that trained people do. Huh. Huh, what? Nothing. She put her chin on her knees. You're not going to ask about the 3 men chasing me? You're not going to tell me. That's true, but you're supposed to ask. Then she pulled something out of her collar and showed it to me for exactly 1 second. A badge, silver, shaped like a shield, with a mark on it I did not recognize and would not understand the weight of for another 6 months. She put it away immediately. Don't ask about that either. Okay. You're supposed to... She stopped. She looked at me for a long moment, and then she started laughing, and it went on for so long and was so far out of proportion to anything that had happened that I began to wonder about head injuries. You are the least curious person I have ever met, said Liu Jia, wiping her eyes. It's restful. I might keep you. We heard them at midnight, 3 sets of feet on the slope below, not being careful anymore, spread wide. They had followed her blood, which is the one thing that does not stop when you do. She was up before I was, checking her daggers by feel with her eyes on the tree line. Okay, new plan. She was already moving me behind her with 1 arm, which was, I want to stress, extremely rude. There are 3. The knight has ultimate defense, so do not waste anything on him. He is invincible for 30 seconds, and then he is not. The archer marks you first, so do not stand still, and the mage is a 25. A breath. So, I'll hold the moth, you run. No, that was not a request. I am extremely good at this, and you are 11 years old. I'm 18. You are 11, said Liu Jia in a whisper that was not a whisper. I stood up, I put my sweet potato down on the rock so it would not get sandy. Then I raised 44 skeletons out of the ground around us. They came up all at once in a ring, dark bronze under a black sky, 44 sets of soul flame lighting in the same instant, and the temperature in that clearing dropped so hard that the mist came down out of the air and lay flat on the grass. Liu Jia's daggers stopped halfway out of their sheaths. Okay, she said quietly, and put them back. The archer's marking arrow landed at my feet. That is what it does. It sticks a little red streak of light to you and tells the other 2 where your kidneys are. I looked down at it. Then I looked up the slope. The mage came over the ridge first, because mages think the front of a fight is where the shouting is. He opened his mouth. I do not know what the sentence was going to be, because 2 seconds is not long enough to finish one. 14 skeletons hit him at once. Berserk Strike is 4 times strength. 3,000 strength times 4 times 14, arriving simultaneously on one man whose entire career had been built on the principle that nothing ever reaches him. He got out half a syllable. The half syllable was not a word. The archer ran, and archers are fast, and I want to give him credit because he made the right call inside about a quarter of a second. Bronze skeleton warriors have 3,000 agility and no lungs. The chase lasted 11 seconds, and I did not watch any of it, and at the end of it, I heard a bow hit the ground somewhere off in the dark, which left the knight. The knight did the correct thing, the trained thing, the thing that has saved 1,000 knights on 1,000 bad nights. He planted his shield in the dirt and lit up ultimate defense, and a dome of white light came up around him like a bell jar, and inside it nothing in the world could touch him. Ultimate defense holds for 30 seconds. I had 30 skeletons standing around with nothing else to do. They hit that dome in shifts. Every strike rang it like a struck pot, and the rings came so close together they stopped being separate sounds and became one long note. I could see him shouting in there. I could not hear a word of it over the noise his own skill was making, which is a detail I have never been able to get out of my head. At 20 seconds, the white went thin. At 25, it went to lace. At 30, it went. So did he. 20 seconds, start to finish, for all three. The clearing was very quiet afterwards. Proskeletons stood where they had stopped, breathing steam they were not producing, and the mist crawled back over the grass and covered everything up again. Liu Jia walked out into the middle of it and turned around slowly with both hands on top of her head. You, she said, are 11. Yes. Those were a 25, a 23, and a 24. Yes. And you told them to consider themselves lucky? They were, I said, this morning. Liu Jia sat down on the rock next to my sweet potato and put her face in her hands, and I genuinely could not tell for about a minute whether she was laughing or having a delayed reaction to almost dying, and I eventually concluded it was both at once, and that this is simply how she is built. My skeletons went through the bodies with a thoroughness I had not asked for and had definitely never taught them. 4 pieces of bronze equipment came back and got laid out at my feet in a neat row, like a cat that has decided you are underfed. The mage had been carrying a skill scroll. Skill scrolls are how a professional learns anything that did not come with the job. You burn one, and it either wakes something up in you, or it does not, and there is no way to aim it. A beginner scroll costs 100,000 gold, which is the exact number that had been pinned to a wall at the exchange for the Goblin King's core, which means one scroll is one life-changing sum of money, once. That is the entire economy of my world in one sentence. Most professionals learn 4 skills in their life and then stop, not because they lack talent, but because they run out of money at 30. I burned it sitting on a rock at 2 in the morning with a dead man's scroll. Light came up around me. Something turned over in my chest like a key finding the right lock at last. Corpse explosion, level 1. Detonate a corpse, dealing 10% of its health to everything within 1 meter. 1 meter is a joke. 1 meter means you have to walk up and stand on the body, and for a caster with my constitution, walking up and standing on things is a career-ending habit. 10% of a corpse's health is worse. It is not damage, it is a suggestion. Times 20. 20 meters. 200% of the corpse's health. I sat with that for a while, doing arithmetic in the dark. What? Said Liu Jia from the rock. Nothing. You have the face. I don't have a face. You have exactly one face, and right now it is doing the thing. She leaned over and squinted at nothing, because there was nothing to look at. Then she went into her jacket and came out with a second scroll and threw it at me underhand. I caught it out of reflex. Then I looked at it properly and did not put it down for a while. An intermediate scroll runs 10 million gold. 10 million, not 100,000. No, I said, you already caught it. Take it back. Absolutely not, that would be humiliating for both of us. She was lying flat on her back on the rock now with her arms behind her head, looking at the stars like a person who has eaten. You raised 40 skeletons for a stranger who ate your dinner. I raised the stakes. That's how this works. That isn't how anything works. It's how I work, said Liu Jia. Are there more sweet potatoes? We talked until the sky went gray, which for me was a personal record and, I suspect, a slow evening for her. She would not say what her mission was, or who the 3 men had been, or why they wanted her. She did tell me her family was in Shajing, which was a bigger admission than she meant to make, and she noticed it about a second after she made it and started talking faster. Then I told her where I was going, and she rolled onto her side and got serious for the first time all night. Shajing Academy takes 150 a year off the national exam, she said. You'll get in, don't waste worry on that. But here's the thing nobody tells outsiders. She held up a finger. Getting into Shajing Academy is not the achievement. Inside the academy, there are more academies. Little ones, walled off, with their own names and their own deans and their own resources, and the students inside them are what the empire is actually building. The top three are Chuangshen, Shenlong, and Fei Qian, in that order, and Chuangshen is not close to the other two. How do you get into those? Level, plus contribution points, plus something they want. She yawned enormously. I have never met anybody who got into Chuangshen the same year they enrolled. Not one person. Also, there is the Shenxia Tower. Don't ask me about the tower. Why not? Because I want you to ask me about the tower. I did not ask her about the tower. She sulked about it for 10 minutes and then fell asleep sitting up. She left at dawn. She also left with every single sweet potato I owned, including the sandy one, in a transaction that involved no discussion whatsoever. She simply put them in her bag while making eye contact with me. Repayment, she said, walking backwards up the slope. For the scroll? For the company, said Liu Jia, and went over the ridge, and I sat there and worked out that I was now down one dinner and up 10 million gold, and had somehow been made to feel like I owed her something. I tested corpse explosion on the 3 bodies before I broke camp, because I wanted to know one thing, and I ended up learning 3. The first thing was the crater, 20 meters of radius, from a level 25 corpse, took out a stand of young trees, and dug a bowl in the forest floor deep enough for me to stand in up to my chest. The blast is not fire, and it is not concussion, exactly. It is the corpse's own life force leaving all at once and sideways, and the more it had, the bigger the hole is. Which means, the tougher my enemy, the better my bomb. I sat on the lip of that crater for 10 minutes with that thought. Every other professional in the world gets weaker as the enemy gets stronger. I get stronger. My ceiling is not my level, it is theirs. The second thing I learned by accident, and it turned out to matter more than anything else in this story. I had a skeleton throw the second body up in the air before I set it off. The airburst was bigger. Same corpse, same skill, same everything. But when it goes off on the ground, half the energy goes into the ground, into a hole, into rock, into making an interesting shape in the dirt. When it goes off at 8 meters, none of it does. All of it goes into the neighborhood. I stood in the smoke with my ears ringing and thought, nobody is going to see that coming. Nobody looks up. It is the single most reliable fact about people I have ever found. The third thing I noticed while I was walking away, and I noticed it because of the silence. There was nothing left. 3 professionals had come into that forest to murder somebody, and where they had been, there was now a scooped-out bowl of raw earth and some scattered bronze. No bodies, no faces, nothing anybody could put a name to. I was 11 years old as a professional in a province where the Dynasty Guild owned the local association office the way you own a hat, and I had just killed 3 licensed adults. I did not plan that, I want to be honest, but I filed it, and the file has never once been empty since. Then I went to West Sea Mine. West Sea Mine is a proper dungeon, and a proper dungeon means difficulty settings, and difficulty settings are the wall that separates people who progress from people who plateau. Normal is the tutorial. 3-person minimum, ordinary monsters, drops that pay for your potions. Nightmare enhances everything. Every monster becomes an elite version of itself. The boss gets extra abilities, and the loot table changes to things that actually matter. 12-person raid, and by 12 they mean 12, with a real knight and a real healer, and everybody sober. Hell is where parties of 12 go to become parties of 9. There were 60 or 70 people camped outside the entrance when I arrived, mostly parties waiting on a lockout, a couple of merchants, a food stall with a pot going. It was almost pleasant. I walked into the firelight with a skeleton beside me because I had stopped putting them away days ago. A man dropped his bowl. A woman got behind her husband without appearing to move. I went to the entry stone and put my hand on it and selected Nightmare. Solo. The camp noise went out in stages, like a wave going down a beach. Somebody said, out loud, "He can't have." And somebody further back said a number, and the number was 60. And I found out later it was the odds on me not coming out. A big man in a stained apron came around the fire. Joe Bo ran the stall, apparently knew everybody within 40 kilometers. "Kid, Nightmare's a 12-man. "Yes." "You're 1-man. "Yes." He looked at the skeleton. The skeleton looked back at him, which he handled better than most. "Is this about the sky thing? At the school?" he said. "Because I heard about that. And if you're doing this to prove something to a bunch of 18-year-olds, I'm doing it because normal difficulty is slow, I said, and went in. Inside, 8 tunnels off one main gallery, wet black rock, and goblin mine guards. Level 14, enhanced. 4,200 experience apiece, which is roughly 9 times what anything in a beginner dungeon pays, and that number alone tells you everything about why people risk Nightmare with 12 friends and a healer. An enhanced elite is not just a bigger goblin. The enhancement gives it more of everything, and more importantly, it gives it a partner. They patrol in 3s down there, 3 at a time in a tunnel, with picks that were made for rock and have been repurposed. 40 skeletons went down 8 tunnels at once and started the day shift. I stayed in the main gallery because of the leash, and because the gallery is the middle of a wheel and every tunnel is a spoke, and a 500-meter circle from the hub covers the whole mine. I have never once in my life fought a dungeon by walking through it. I stand at the point where all the corridors agree and let the map assemble. And it did assemble. Tunnel 3, 16 guards, water at the far end. Tunnel 5, a shaft going down. Tunnel 7, wolves, a lot of wolves, penned, which I noted and did not understand yet. The first hour was industrial. 3 guards would meet a dozen skeletons, and there would be one short, flat bang of berserk strikes going off together, and then nothing. And then a number in my head. The second hour was the same, except that the wolves in Tunnel 7 had started making noise. I have run a great many dungeons since then, and I still think about that first Nightmare clear, because it is the one where I was still stupid. I had corpse explosion. I had 20 meters and double damage, and a mine gradually filling up with bodies. And I used it maybe 4 times in 2 hours, 1 corpse at a time, walking over to each one like a man with a flamethrower carefully lighting candles. The skill did not go up a single level in that entire run, and it never once occurred to me to wonder why. 2 hours in, the main gallery opened out into something the size of a train station, and at the far end of it, the Mine Wolf King was waiting. It was the first thing I ever fought that had a plan. It came at us out of the dark, took one look at 40 bronze skeletons already spreading into a line, and roared. Not a fight roar. A specific one, with structure in it. My front rank went 10 meters backwards through the air, and the loose rock came off the ceiling in sheets, and while my skeletons were getting up, the Mine Wolf King turned around and ran. It did not run away. That is the part I did not understand for 11 more seconds. It ran along the gallery wall and put its shoulder through 3 iron gates, one after another, in a straight line, and behind those gates were the Mine Wolf pens, and behind the pens were the wolves. They came out like a burst pipe. The floor of that gallery went from stone to fur in about 4 seconds. It was not a pack, it was a flood, and the sound was not barking, it was the sound of a river arriving, and my 40 skeletons went from a line to 40 separate islands in it. I want to be accurate about the next 15 seconds, because everything I am comes out of them. I was standing at the back of my own army in a mine gallery with several hundred enhanced wolves coming down it, and I was not frightened. And I have thought about why. It is because I had already run the arithmetic in that crater in the forest, and something in the back of my head had been waiting for exactly this and had gotten bored of waiting. I had a skeleton kill 1 wolf, just 1, at the very front, right in the middle of the flood where the press was thickest. Then I detonated it. 20 meters went out in every direction and took about 30 wolves with it, and every one of those 30 was now also a corpse, and every one of those corpses was also a bomb. I set off the next one, and the next. It became a chain, and the chain ran up that gallery ahead of the wolves like fire up a fuse. The detonations stopped being separate events and turned into one long tearing noise that went on, and the pressure of it pushed my hair straight back from 40 meters away, and rock dust came down off the ceiling in curtains until I could not see the far wall. Then it stopped. I stood in a mine that was, structurally speaking, in significantly worse condition than when I had found it, and checked my experience bar. 32% to 72%. 1 blast. At the far end of the gallery, the Mine Wolf King had stopped moving. I would like to tell you it was too stupid to be afraid, but I watched it look at the gallery it had personally filled with its own pack 4 seconds earlier, and then I watched it look at me. Then it came anyway, which I respected, and which did not help it at all. The real boss of the West Sea Mine lives past the wolves. Its throne room is at the bottom of the deepest shaft, and it is not a throne room, it is a foreman's office that a goblin has decorated. There was a chair in it made of pit props. There was a rug. I have no idea where a goblin gets a rug. The Goblin King came out of it at a dead sprint. Level 16, 4 meters of muscle in scavenged plate, carrying a great sword it had clearly taken off somebody considerably taller than the average goblin, and had never had adjusted. It did not roar, it did not posture. It came through the door, scanned a room containing 40 skeletons and 1 human being, correctly identified the only thing in there made of meat, and went straight for it. That was me, obviously. I let it come. I had gotten comfortable being the least interesting thing in my own fights. The great sword stopped 10 centimeters from my face. It did not stop because of a shield or a barrier. It stopped because it hit something, and that something was not me, and I felt precisely nothing. Then every skeleton in that chamber staggered at once, all 40, together. Cracks went up dark bronze ribs like frost across a window, one great grinding crunch of a sound, and 4 of them went to one knee. And I stood there with a boss's blade a hand's width from my nose and understood the shape of my entire life. The blow was mine. It had been shared out instantly and evenly across every one of them, which meant that if the blow had been a little harder, if that had been a level 26 instead of a 16, 40 skeletons would have come apart at the same moment and left me standing alone in a room with a goblin. It turns out I am the only weakness. That is the sentence I said out loud in an empty boss room to nobody, and it is the most useful thing anybody has ever told me, and the person who told me it was a goblin who did it for free. Every enemy I have ever had has looked at the skeletons and decided they are the problem. They are not the problem. They are the insurance policy, and insurance has a limit. I am the problem. I have always been the problem. Every wall of bone I have ever put between me and the world, every layer, every stupid stack of bodies, I do all of that because of one swing in a foreman's office. It wound up for a second. I raised my hand and put a flame in it. Soulfire came with the class, and I had not used it once, because up to that point, everything had died before I needed to. It is not a fireball. It ignores armor, ignores toughness, ignores whatever the target is wearing or made of, and it does not do much damage at all. What it does is hurt. The Goblin King's swing died in its hands. It screamed and clawed at its own head with the sword still in its fist, and while it was doing that, 40 cracked bronze skeletons walked in and took it apart over about 9 seconds. Level 12. The floor of that office gave up 2 things. A robe with a spirit bonus, which I put on over my school shirt immediately because I had been fighting in a school shirt with a rip in it for 2 weeks and it had begun to feel like a statement. And, out of the floor under the chair, with a sound like a struck bell, a red gemstone the size of a plum. The Goblin King's crystal core. The thing on the yellowed poster, the 100,000 gold. The reason a guild had a job order on a public wall. I put it in my bag next to a sweet potato and walked out. I had been inside about an hour. The camp had grown while I was in there because word travels at the speed of gossip, and I came out of a nightmare dungeon into roughly 200 people who had specifically arrived to watch a skinny kid not come out. There was a betting pool. I learned about the betting pool later from Joe Bo, who had taken the bets and did not apologize for it. Nobody had taken the over. The odds on the board had been 60 to 1 that I would not walk out, and the second market, because there is always a second market, was on how long the body would take to be recovered, and the favorite was Thursday, which is when the cart comes. I want to be fair to those people, too. They were not being cruel. A camp outside a dungeon is full of professionals who have watched confident young men walk into difficulty settings above their weight for years, and the outcome is so consistent that betting against it is not cynicism, it is actuarial. What I did not understand until much later is that when the odds are 60 to 1 and the 60 to 1 comes in, it does not make people admire you. It makes them recalculate everything they thought they knew about what is standing next to them. The noise stopped when I reached the top of the ramp. It did not fade. It stopped, all at once, and 200 faces did the arithmetic in unison. 1 hour, solo, nightmare. Joe Bo put a skewer of grilled meat in my hand before I had finished walking up the last 3 meters, and then refused payment with the specific violence of a man who has decided to adopt you. Nightmare, he said. 1 hour. Yes. Boy, do you know what my party does on Nightmare? 12 of us. 4 hours if it goes well. He looked back at the entrance. I've been coming here 9 years. The wolves make it faster. The wolves are the reason it takes 4 hours. Yes, I said. Joe Bo stood there for a second. Then he turned around and announced to the entire camp that if anybody had anything they wanted to say about it, they could come and say it to him first, which was extremely kind and completely unnecessary because nobody in that camp had anything to say at all. I stayed at that camp overnight, which I had not planned to do. Joe Bo fed me twice more and would not take money either time, and in between he introduced me to about 9 people, none of whom wanted to be introduced to me, all of whom shook my hand anyway because he was standing there. That is how I learned what a camp outside a dungeon actually is. It is not a queue, it is a village that moves. There are parties in there who have been running the same dungeon 3 times a week for 6 years, and they know each other's rotations, and they trade lockout slots, and there is an entire informal market in information about who has cleared what and when the Wolf King respawns. Joe Bo is at the middle of it because he feeds everybody and remembers names. He told me, over the second bowl, that a 12-man nightmare clear pays out about 80,000 gold in materials, split 12 ways minus potions, and that a good party can do it twice a week. 7,000 gold a week, for 12 trained adults with equipment, doing the most profitable thing available to them. I had just come out of the same dungeon in 1 hour with the Goblin King's crystal core in my bag. I did not say that. I sat there and ate his food and did the arithmetic quietly and understood, for the first time, that I was not slightly ahead of these people. I was in a different economy standing in their firelight. The Dynasty Guild arrived the next morning, 40 of them in matching cloaks, and they did not camp. They came up the road in formation at first light and formed a line across the mouth of the dungeon and started turning people away. And the people went. That is the part that made the decision for me, and I want to be honest that it was a decision and not a reflex. They went because the Dynasty Guild owns about 1/3 of the province and owns the association office and has a long institutional memory for faces, and every person in that camp had a family somewhere in a town where the guild collects. 2 parties packed up and left inside 20 minutes. A merchant with a cart of potions was told he could stay if he moved 60 meters. Joe Bo moved his stall 60 meters without being asked, which told me he had done this before. I ate my breakfast and watched a family with 2 kids get told to leave a public dungeon. They had come in on a farm cart. The father was maybe 30 and had the level of a man who fights twice a month to supplement a harvest. He argued for about a minute, politely, with his hat in his hands. Then I walked up to the line with the meat skewer I had been saving from the night before. The man in the middle was a mage in very good boots, Sun Lei, level 25, which in West Sea City is an enormous number, and he had the bored patience of a man whose actual job is to stand in a doorway and be tedious at people. Dungeons closed. It's a public dungeon. It is closed, said Sun Lei, because our young master requires the Goblin King's crystal core to complete his quest, and until he has it, nobody in this province is going to get lucky. He looked me over the way you check a shoe for gum. Move aside, or die. That's the whole menu. Somebody behind him ran a detection on me, snorted, and read the result out to the group so everybody could enjoy it. Level 12. The entire Dynasty line laughed, not politely. It went on for a while, and it had that specific quality that group laughter gets when the group is armed and the target is not. Here is what I did not say, and I want it on the record, because 200 people watched this, and every version that got around town afterwards has thunder in it. I did not tell them I had the core. I did not negotiate, and I did not threaten, and I did not make a speech. I want to be honest about why. It was not tactics. It was that I had been turned away from a door before, in a school gymnasium, by 600 people, and I had discovered that day that I do not argue. It took 8 seconds. I had 20 skeletons up out of the ground before the laughing finished. Their healer, every guild line has one, back left, always the same place, went down to soulfire in the first second, because a healer who is screaming is not a healer. Their knight came forward the way knights do, and 14 berserk strikes landed on him at once, and the instant his body hit the dirt, I had a skeleton pick it up and throw it. Up. Not at them. Up. Sun Lei's mouth was open. He was mid-word. Looking back, I think it was a spell, but honestly, it might have been a question. The airburst went off 8 meters above the Dynasty Guild's line. Everything I learned in that forest, all of it, at once. 20 meters of radius from a fresh, level 20-something corpse with nothing underneath to swallow it. When the dust cleared, there was a shallow scoop taken out of the ground where a wall of matching cloaks had been standing, and a very large number of extremely quiet witnesses about 60 meters back. Then I did the part I am least proud of and would absolutely do again. I walked the field and detonated the rest one at a time. Not for cruelty, because there were bodies, and bodies are evidence, and I was a 12-year-old professional in a province where the Dynasty Guild owned the association office, and the association office owns the word murder. 9 detonations. By the end, there was churned dirt, a smell, and a handful of cloak buttons. The 200 witnesses did the arithmetic considerably faster than I did. They did not run at first, which I have always found more chilling than running. They packed. Quietly, thoroughly, folding tents with the efficiency of people who have collectively decided they were never anywhere near here. By nightfall, the camp outside the West Sea mine was empty ground and 40 cold fires. Joe Bo shook my hand, told me to eat properly and to stop skipping meals, and left with his cart at a speed I would not have believed that cart could reach. Within 3 days, per the letters I got later, a noticeable fraction of the district had discovered urgent business in other provinces. And late that afternoon, Zhou Cheng, the Dynasty Guild's young master, the reason 40 people had stood in front of a public door, the boy whose homework this was, came out of the dungeon he had been grinding all day. He came out sweaty and pleased with himself, holding up a handful of nothing much, already talking, ready to be congratulated. He walked out into an empty field. No line, no cloaks, no guild. 200 cold campfires, a lot of trampled grass, and the wind coming off the sea. I know precisely what that looked like, because I was sitting on a rock 400 meters up the slope eating the last of Joe Bo's grilled meat, watching him turn around in a slow circle calling names. I went back into the mine the next morning with 64 skeletons and killed the Goblin King in 30 seconds. Level 13. The Dynasty Guild investigation lasted 4 days. They sent people, serious people, not cloaks, a woman with a badge and 2 men who took notes, and they set up a table at the mine entrance and worked through everybody who came past. I watched most of it from 400 meters up the slope while eating breakfast, because I had nowhere else to be, and because it is genuinely interesting to watch people who are good at their jobs. They were good at their jobs. They asked open questions. They never once said the word missing. They asked people what the weather had been like on the day, which is the question you ask when you want to find out whether somebody was there at all. And what they got, from 26 separate individuals over 4 days, was that it had been a lovely week, thank you, and nobody had been at the mine on Tuesday. Joe Bo came back on day 3 with his cart, which took a specific kind of courage, and when they got to him, he said he had been in the city buying pork. He had not been in the city buying pork. He had been 40 meters from the front of that line and had put a meat skewer in my hand 2 hours beforehand. I do not know why he did it. I have never asked him. I have my suspicions, and they are all about a family with 2 small children being told to go home from a public dungeon. What they found in the end was an empty field with a scoop out of it, 40 cold campfires, and absolutely nobody willing to have an opinion in front of a stranger. 40 licensed professionals had gone out of existence in a public place in daylight in front of a crowd of 200. And by the time the guild arrived, that crowd had unanimously developed a rich inner life about the weather that week. Then the Professionals Association got involved, which the Dynasty Guild enjoyed considerably less. The association's position was straightforward, and they put it in writing. Your armed men blockaded a public dungeon. That is a crime with a number on it. And if you would like a formal investigation into their disappearance, we will begin by formally investigating what they were doing there. The guild dropped it inside a week. Then, Zhou Wei, who runs the Dynasty Guild and is Zhou Cheng's father, took his son apart in front of the entire guild hall. I was not there. I have heard it from 3 separate people, in 3 separate versions, and the details that survived all 3 are these: 40 men, 100,000 gold errand, a teenager's quest checklist, and the word toy used more than once, at volume, in front of every officer in the building. I have never had a father, so I have no useful comparison. It sounded like being alone, but with company. While that was happening, I was in the mine, because on the 3rd run, I finally stopped being an idiot. Here is what I had been doing: walking the dungeon, killing groups as I found them, occasionally detonating a body when the situation was already handled, room by room, like a man mowing a lawn. Here is what I did instead. I sent every skeleton I had down every tunnel at once with a single instruction: do not kill anything, just be interesting. 40 of them went into the dark and made a nuisance of themselves in 8 directions simultaneously, and then came back down the main gallery at a dead sprint with the entire population of the West Sea mine behind them. All of it. Every mine guard, every wolf out of every pen, every crawling thing that lived in the side shafts, in one screaming column funneled into one room by the shape of the architecture. I killed the closest one. Then I let go. The chain went through that dungeon the way a rumor goes through a school. It ran up the gallery, went around the corner, doubled back into the side tunnels because things were still pouring in from the side tunnels, found new bodies to be a bomb about faster than the old ones ran out, and the entire event lasted maybe 11 seconds and sounded like a war. Level 14, in 5 minutes. I want to say one thing about that because it is the only real insight I have ever had, and it took me 3 whole runs to get to it. Every other professional walks into a dungeon and treats it as a sequence. Room, room, corridor, room, boss. That is not stupidity, that is correct, because if you pull 2 rooms at once with a normal party, you die. I had been doing the same thing out of habit, because habit is what you inherit from watching other people. But I do not have their constraint. Their constraint is that a group of monsters can kill them. My constraint is the opposite. A group of monsters is worth more to me than the same monsters spread out, because my damage does not come from my skeletons at all. My skeletons make the first body. The dungeon does the rest of the work on itself. Which means the correct way for me to run a dungeon is not room by room. It is all at once. I walked out with my ears ringing, and Mei Ling was standing at the entrance with her arms crossed. "You have been in there," she said, "for 5 minutes." Yes. 5. Yes. She ran a detection on me before I could object, which is rude, and she did it anyway, which is Mei Ling. 14. Her voice went up half an octave. 14. I have been running normal difficulty with a hired party every day for a week. I have not slept properly. I am 11, and you are 14. Then she stopped, because she had heard the part of that sentence she had not meant to say out loud. I looked at her wrist. There was a small, dull amulet on it that had not been there at the ceremony. What's that? Nothing. It's not nothing. It's warm. Mei Ling put her hand over it, glared at me, and then held it out with the expression of somebody paying a debt. Cooldown amulet, basic grade, 10 charges, then it takes a month to refill. She said it the way people say things they have practiced not bragging about and hate. Every dungeon has a lockout after you clear it. Hours. This zeros it 10 times. I did the arithmetic standing in front of her, and she watched me do it, and I watched her watch me. "You can't clear it," I said. "I did not say that. You've been running normal difficulty for a week. Normal doesn't drop anything worth having. You want the Goblin King's staff, and that's a nightmare drop." I put my hands in my pockets. "So you have 10 free resets on a dungeon you can't finish, and I finish it in 5 minutes and I don't have an amulet." Mei Ling's mouth opened. It closed. Her face went through about 4 separate expressions, and the last one was the one where a person is doing arithmetic they resent. "You are proposing," she said, "that you carry me. You'd share the amulet. That is humiliating." "That's the deal." She stood in the wind off the water for a long moment with her jaw set, the eldest daughter of the Mei clan, who 4 days earlier had refused a standing contract with 4 level 30s from her own father because she wanted to do it herself. "Fine," said Mei Ling, "but I am not carrying your bag." "I don't have a bag." "I know," she said, disgusted. "That is part of what is wrong with you." Her first nightmare run, she was terrified. She hit it well, and I will give her that forever, because a level 11 walking into an enhanced elite dungeon is an objectively insane thing to do, and she did it with her chin out and both fireballs lit. She stood behind 64 skeletons with her back against the rock and did not make one sound when the first goblin mine guard came around the corner at level 14 and stopped existing before it finished the corner. Then the gallery opened up, and the gates went, and the wolves came. She flattened against the wall. "Cover your ears," I said. "Why would I need to?" I let go. Mei Ling stood in a mine gallery and watched a river of enhanced monsters stop being a river in stages, going away from her, each detonation opening into the next like doors down a corridor, all the way around the bend and out of sight, and the pressure of it lifted her hair straight back off her forehead and held it there. It went quiet. Rock dust came down. She lowered her hands very slowly. "That," said Mei Ling, "is not a class. That is a natural disaster with a hairstyle." Then the Mine Wolf King came out and did its roar and its clever gate trick, and I want to note that it did the identical clever trick as the previous 2 times, and this time there was nothing left behind the gates to open them onto. It lasted 4 seconds. Mei Ling stared at the space where an elite boss had been standing, and this is the part I remember properly, because the terror went out of her all at once and something worse came in behind it. "Again," she said. We killed the Goblin King an hour later, and when the loot came up, there was a staff lying on the floor of the foreman's office with a red core set in the head of it, a proper nightmare drop. The exact item she had been grinding a week of normal difficulty to have a chance at. I picked it up and held it out. Mei Ling did not take it. That's yours. I don't like staffs. You're a mage. I'm a necromancer. That is a mage. It isn't, I said, and put it in her hands, because we were standing in a boss room, and I wanted to go again. She looked at it for about 3 seconds too long. Then she said in an entirely different voice, "Thanks." And after that, she did not call me blockhead for almost 2 days, which from Mei Ling is a state funeral's worth of feeling. We ran that dungeon 4 more times back to back, and then 4 more the next day, and the amulet had 10 charges, and we spent every one of them. She got faster at it. Not at fighting, there was no fighting for her to do, but at reading it. By the 3rd run, she was calling the pulls before I made them. By the 4th, she had worked out that the wolf pens repopulate on a different timer than the guards, and started telling me which tunnel was worth going down first, and she was right about half the time, which for somebody who had been inside her first nightmare dungeon 8 hours earlier is a genuinely serious piece of work. By the 5th run, she had stopped asking questions and started arguing. "You're doing the pull wrong. It works." "It works and it's wrong," said Mei Ling, walking backwards in front of me. "You bring them all to one room. If one of them is slower than the others, you get a tail, and your chain runs out before the tail arrives, and then you have 4 live wolves and no bodies. You should pull to the corner, not the middle. Make the geometry do it." I thought about that for about 4 seconds. Then I pulled to the corner. It was better. It was noticeably better, and she watched me change it, and she did not say a single smug word about it, which cost her something. That is Mei Ling. She had been in that dungeon for 1 day, and she had already found an inefficiency in the thing I do that I had been doing for 2 weeks. She could not have executed any part of it. She saw it anyway. Somewhere around the 6th run, she stopped standing behind me. Somewhere around the 7th, she fell asleep. I want to be clear about this. Mei Ling of the Mei clan, who had a hired escort offered to her by her own father and turned it down, sat down against the wall of an enhanced elite nightmare dungeon in a gallery full of dead wolves with 64 bronze skeletons standing around her in the dark, put her chin on her knees, and slept for 40 minutes. I let her. There was nothing in there that was going to reach her, and she had not slept properly in a week. Her father's men turned up outside the mine on the 2nd day, incidentally. 4 of them, level 30s, standing at a polite distance from the entrance, doing nothing at all. She saw them when we came out, and her face went hard. He sent them anyway. "They're not helping. They're watching," said Mei Ling, which is worse. That's him telling me he'll allow it. She stood there for a moment with her jaw working. Then she said, "Reset it," and went back in. Then, on the 6th run, I started apologizing to the Goblin King. I do not know why I started. It came out of its office at a sprint for the 6th time in one afternoon, and it looked at me, and I looked at it, and I said, 4 more times. Mei Ling made a noise like she had swallowed a bug. "Did you just—" "It's polite." "You are apologizing," she said, "to the thing you were about to murder for the 6th time. 7th. She started laughing and could not stop. She was still doing it during the loot phase, wiping her eyes on the back of her wrist and calling me a weirdo, and then she said the thing she had clearly been carrying around all day. "Provincial top scorer," she said, to the ceiling of the boss room, not to me. "The exam has a rank. Whoever is provincial first gets Shajing Academy automatically. And inside Shajing Academy, there are the top academies, and the top of the top is Chuangshen." A pause. "I am going to Chuangshen." "Okay. Say something else." "My sister's in Shajing Academy." That got her head off the wall. "You have a sister?" "Manhwa. She went last year." "Is she good?" "She was first in her year in the province." Mei Ling's eyebrows went up and stayed up. "And?" "And she stopped calling," I said, and went to reset the dungeon. Li Ming found us on day 3, sitting on his shield outside the mine, having a very bad week. The problem with being an advanced knight in a small city is that everybody wants you, and nobody can pay for you. The parties that could afford a real tank had already filled the slot with somebody's cousin, and the parties that could not afford one had asked him to come along for a share so small it was an insult with a number attached. He had been turned down 4 times in 2 days. The cape was gone. He had stopped doing the thing with his chest. He saw us come out of the dungeon, got up, opened his mouth, and Mei Ling said, "No." You don't know what I was going to say. You were going to say, you're the tank. I am the tank. There is nothing to tank, said Mei Ling, with the enormous serenity of a person who has been on the inside for 72 hours. Watch. So we took him in. Li Ming went into a nightmare dungeon behind 64 bronze skeletons holding a shield he did not use once. He tried at first. That is the part I liked. Every time something came around a corner, he put himself in front of it, which is exactly right and exactly what an advanced knight is for. And every single time, the thing he was protecting us from was already in pieces before he finished planting his feet. He did it 7 times. By the wolf gallery, he had stopped stepping in front of things. By the boss room, he had stopped talking, which for Li Ming is a medical emergency. Outside, he sat down on the ground, put his shield flat across his knees, and looked up at me for a while. Jian Yu, I have been an idiot to you since we were 15. Yes. I called you blockhead in front of the whole class for 3 years. Yes. You could at least argue with one of those. They're both true. Li Ming nodded slowly. Then he grabbed my leg. I would like to formally attach myself to you, he said from around my knee. I'll carry things. I'll fetch things. I will be your accessory. I have no pride left. I checked this morning. Get up. Say I can stay. Get up. And yes. We came back to the city wall at dusk on the 5th day, all 3 of us filthy, because the great exam was in 2 days and every principal in the district was rounding up their students like hens. There was a crowd at the gate, families mostly, and about a dozen recruiters from guilds who show up every year to look at the new stock. Principal Songhai ran the scans himself, in the open, in front of everybody, because he is who he is. Li Ming, level 12. Applause, and real applause. 12 at 18 is very good. His mother cried again. One of the guild recruiters wrote something down. Mei Ling, level... He stopped. Read it, said Mei Ling. 15. The gate got loud. 15 is not very good. 15 is provincial contender good, and the Mei clan's man at the back of the crowd got his communicator out so fast he dropped it and had to pick it up off the cobbles in front of everybody. Then Principal Songhai turned to me. He already knew. He had the expression. He ran it anyway, because he wanted the machine to say it, and not him. He read the display 4 times. I watched him do it. He read it, and then he looked at me over the top of the scanner, and then he read it again, and the 4th time he tilted the device slightly as if the angle might be the problem. Principal Songhai is a man who has run that scanner at that gate every year for 4 decades. He has scanned 3,000 18-year-olds. He knows the shape of the numbers by heart, where the average sits, where the good ones sit, what a provincial contender looks like coming back from a first field trip. When he finally said it quietly, which somehow made it land harder. 16. Nobody made a sound. 16 in 9 days from a standing start is not a number that appears anywhere in a district's paperwork. There is no line on the form for it. The provincial average for a new professional after 2 weeks is level 6. Elder Song, said the 3rd district principal in a strange, careful voice. Elder Song, what have you been feeding them? Nothing, said Principal Songhai, staring down at his own scanner. That is precisely the problem. I have been feeding that one nothing for 2 years. The night before the exam, the 3 of us sat on the seawall. Li Ming had bought a new cape, which he was pretending he had not. Mei Ling had a list. She had actually written a list of the 4 rounds and what she intended to do in each one, and she read it out loud, and Li Ming made suggestions, and every suggestion was that he should go first. Round 2 is the one that kills people, said Mei Ling. 30 minutes. Everybody plans for the first 10. Nobody plans for minute 22. What's your plan for minute 22? Suffer, she said, loudly. What's yours? I thought about it. Bring food. They both looked at me. Bring, Li Ming said, bring food to the endurance round. Yes. Because you'll be hungry. Yes. Mei Ling put her face in her hands and said into them, do you know what? I hope you do. I genuinely hope you do it and somebody senior is watching. I did do it, and somebody senior was watching, and I have never been able to work out whether that helped my evaluation or nearly ruined it. The great exam happens on one day, nationwide, all provinces at the same hour. They teleport every 18-year-old in the province into the provincial capital at dawn. I went from a coastal town to Shanghai City in the time it takes to blink, and then spent a full minute finding out what my inner ear thought about that. 200,000 candidates in one plaza. Every one of them had spent 3 years being told that this single day decides the entire remainder of their life, which is not motivational rhetoric, it is just true. Your exam result determines your academy determines your resources, and in a world where a skill scroll costs 100,000 gold, resources are the only thing that separates a professional at 30 from a professional at 50. Then the sky went dark, and the trial tower came down. I do not have a good comparison for it. It is a tower, upside down, hanging out of the cloud layer, and it is so wide at the base that it puts an entire city district into shadow, and it comes down slowly enough that you have time to work out how small you are. 200,000 people went quiet in stages. An examiner's voice came out of the air. Round 1 begins in 60 seconds. Any candidate who speaks during a round is disqualified. Somebody in the crowd said, "Wait, what counts as speak?" There was a beam of light, and then there was a gap in the crowd where a boy had been standing. Nobody said anything else for 60 seconds. Round 1 is single combat. Sealed room, one monster scaled to your class and your level, and they time you. That is the entire test, and it is designed so that a solid candidate takes about 30 seconds, and an exceptional one takes 10. They gave me a wolf orc mage. I had one skeleton out before the room finished forming. Berserk strike. The examiners told me afterwards what their board said, because by that point they had entirely stopped pretending to be professional about it. It said 0.1 seconds. They ran it again. That is permitted. An examiner can reseat a candidate if the equipment glitches, and as far as they were concerned, the equipment had glitched. Same room, same monster. 0.1 seconds. Then a man leaned over the console and did something that the rules technically allow and nobody has done in living memory. Liu Zhen ran the entire Jiangning province examination. He had a face like a closed door and, I am told, had not raised his voice at work in 19 years. He set my room to legendary. Not scaled to me, scaled to the ceiling of the round. The room reformed. The thing that came out of the wall was 4 times the size of the first one, and its shoulders did not fit through the arch. 0.1 seconds. He awarded me 100 points, which is the maximum a candidate can receive in round 1. Then he awarded me 1,000 more, which is not a thing that exists on the score sheet, and had to write a justification in the margin by hand. I have wondered ever since what he wrote in that box. The round 1 board went up over the plaza in letters 4 meters high. Lin Mo Yu, 0.1 seconds, 1,100. Zuo Mei, 3.2 seconds. Xia Shui, 5.2 seconds. Wang Zihao, 4th. Mei Ling found me in the crowd. She looked at the board for a long time, and then at me, and I watched her decide not to say anything, which was new. Zhou Cheng found me too. He did not say anything either. He had placed 4th in a province of 200,000 people, which is an extraordinary result for a human being, and he was standing in front of a board where a boy with no guild and no money and a dead family was sitting 1,100 points above him. He was not angry yet. He was doing something in his head that was not arithmetic. Up in the observation gallery, Principal Song Hai had to be handed a chair. Between rounds, they put you in a holding hall, and the holding hall is where the exam actually eats people. 2 hours of sitting on a bench with 200,000 results going up on a board in front of you. There is no privacy. Your rank is public and it updates. I watched a girl 3 benches down find out she had come 140th in the province, which is a superb result, and then watch her own rank slide to 260 as later rooms reported. Li Ming sat next to me the whole time and talked without stopping, which I understood was not for my benefit. 63rd right now. 63rd is fine. 63rd gets me a good academy, not a top one, but a good one. My mother will be... He stopped. My mother will say 63rd is wonderful, and then she'll ask about the top 20. 63rd out of 200,000. Yes, that's the top 100th of 1%. Li Ming looked at me for a second. You know, he said, when you do bother to talk, you're not bad at it. Round 2 is endurance. 30 minutes, hell difficulty, monsters coming out of the portal at a fixed rate, 1 point per kill. It is not a strength test. It is a stamina test, and everyone knows it. The whole design is that around minute 19, your mana is gone, and your arms are gone, and you have to decide how you are going to spend the last 11 minutes. They sealed me in. The portal opened. I put 2 skeletons in front of it. Then I sat down on the floor about 8 meters back, took out a sweet potato, and ate it. I ate 4 over the next half hour. I had brought 6. Every 10 or 12 seconds, something enhanced and screaming came out of a hole in the world and got taken apart by 2 dead men standing in front of it, and my number went up by 1, and I sat on the floor of a sealed room at the national examination of the Shenxia Empire and chewed. At one point, I lay down. 30 minutes later, a bell rang, and the monsters stopped. Lin Moyu, 1,605 points, 301 kills. Second place had 91. I found out afterwards, because an examiner told me while trying not to look at me directly, that 301 was more than the last 2 provincial top scorers of Jiangning combined. One of those was a holy mage named Fan Yu, who is now famous enough that people name their children after her. The other one was my sister. Jianhua's round 2 number from the previous year was still up on the wall in the examiner's office on a little brass plate, because provincial records get plates. I stood in that corridor and looked at her name for a while. Zhou Cheng filed a formal accusation of cheating 4 minutes after the board went up. He filed it loudly in the plaza in front of a very large number of people, using the word obviously several times. The examiners ran the review. It took 11 minutes because they take it seriously and because the recordings exist. They did not find cheating because there wasn't any. Liu Zhen came out onto the balcony and said so in 1 sentence and went back inside without waiting. Zhou Cheng filed a second accusation. Round 3 is a boss. 1 candidate, 1 hell difficulty boss, no time limit, and if you get through it, you are in the top 1% of the province. The pass rate that year was about 1 in 9. 2 berserk strikes. 2,105 points. I was out of the room before the examiner watching my feed had finished writing down what happened in the first swing. Li Ming cleared round 3 as well, and I want that on the record, because he did it the honest way. 22 minutes, shield up, taking hits, mana potion at minute 14, and he came out of that room gray in the face with his hands shaking and ranked 67th in the province. I have never seen a human being so happy to be 67th at anything in my life. He hugged an examiner. Round 4 is waves. 10 waves of 10, escalating, and unlike round 2, they do not come politely one at a time. They arrive as a formation with the ranged ones at the back. A third skeleton appeared beside me when wave 1 came through the portal. I have not been mentioning the skeleton scaling because it happens quietly and there is no announcement. Every level I take, they take. Every talent tick, they take. Their bones get denser, their swords get better, and their numbers climb without me thinking about it. So that by the time I walked into the exam, they were something a provincial examiner had no reference point for. It showed in the timings. Wave 1 cleared in 3 seconds, Wave 2 in 3 seconds, Wave 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way to 10, like a metronome, with a 9-second gap in between while the room reset. Somewhere around Wave 6, I sat down against the wall. Somewhere around Wave 8, I closed my eyes. I am aware that I fell asleep during the 4th round of the national examination of the Shenxia Empire. I am aware of how that sounds. In my defense, I had been awake for 2 days. There was a 9-second gap between waves, and I have never once in my life managed to stay conscious in a warm room with nothing to do. Li Ming went out at Wave 5, which is a fine result, and spent the next 20 minutes in the recovery hall telling everybody who slowed down near him that his round 3 boss had been 4 meters tall. By the time the 4th board went up, there were 5 names on it. 5. Out of the 120 who had reached round 3. Out of 200,000 who started that morning. Lin Moyuo, 3,605. 所美下血王字号封秀. And then the examiner's voice said the thing that changed the temperature of the whole plaza. The 5 listed candidates will now enter battle space. I did not know what that meant. Mei Ling did, and she went the color of paper. Gao Li, a holy swordsman, big, quiet, the kind of man who apologizes when you bump into him, said, "Oh," in a very small voice. Battle space is round 5. It exists every year, and in most provinces, in most years, it goes unused, because you have to clear 4 rounds to be offered it, and almost nobody does. There is no observation feed. The examiners cannot watch it. There are, I was told later, fewer than 10 people in the entire Shenxia Empire with clearance to see inside, and none of them work in provincial examinations. What is it? I asked Mei Ling while the room was forming around us. Nobody knows. She was breathing carefully, in through the nose. That's not a joke. It's the one round with no published format. There's no pass mark. There's no time limit. Every year, the 5 people who go in come out, and none of them can describe it the same way. She swallowed. My father knows 2 people who have been in battle space. One of them will not talk about it, and the other one lied. Lied how? He said it was fine, said Mei Ling. Gao Li, who had not said anything since the announcement, spoke up. My master told me one thing about it. What? He said the 4th round measures what you can do. Gao Li adjusted his grip on his sword. And the 5th round measures what you are. Shulan said from somewhere behind all of us, that is the single least helpful thing anybody has ever said, and Mei Ling laughed with no humor in it at all. The 5 of us went in. The ground in battle space is black, not dark, black and soft, and it gives under your boots like ash that has been rained on and then dried and then rained on again. The air is thick. It smells like a battlefield 3 days afterwards, and there is no sun, and the sky is not a sky, it is a lid. I liked it immediately, which I understand is a red flag. I found out much later that battle space is not simulated. That floor is real dirt from a real war, imported and laid down because whatever the 5th round is measuring cannot be measured on clean ground. Mei Ling was breathing wrong. Gao Li had his sword out and both hands on it. Shulan had gone into a shadow, and I could not find her. Then the monsters came, and they came in waves of 100, Phelan orcs, level 15, 50 points each. I killed one and detonated it and got about 11 friends of his, and then I turned around to detonate the next one, and there was nothing there to detonate. The corpses vanish in 10 seconds. That is the trick of battle space, and it is a very good trick, and it is aimed with unnerving precision at exactly what I do. You cannot chain in there. Every body you make is on a timer, and by the time you have made enough of them to be dangerous, the early ones have already gone. I stood there for a second and did the arithmetic on being counter-designed, because that is what it was. Somebody, 100 years ago, had built a room specifically to make sure that no single professional could ever stack an advantage inside it. 10 seconds is not an arbitrary number. 10 seconds is exactly long enough to use a body, and exactly too short to save one. Then I worked out the hole in it. And the hole in it is that the timer starts when the thing dies, not when it arrives, when it dies. So I stopped killing. I had my skeletons pull instead. All of them, out across that black plain in every direction, gathering Phelan orcs the way you gather sheep. Not fighting them, just being unbearable at them, and then walking away slowly enough to be followed. That is the entire craft, and it is the part of what I do that nobody ever describes correctly. Anybody can set off a bomb. The work is in the 90 seconds before it, in the herding, in the spacing, in getting 100 separate creatures to voluntarily stand close together in a place that you picked, all at the same time, while none of them are dead yet. It took nearly 2 minutes, and I got hit a great many times, and I did not care, because damage transfer does not care. When the last of them was in, I had 100 Phelan orcs packed into a single screaming mass in the middle of nowhere. None of them dead. All of them extremely interested in me. Then I killed the one in the middle. I got 70 off the first blast and the rest off the chain that came out of it, and the entire thing took under 4 seconds, which is comfortably inside 10. My score went from 3,605 to 8,605. In the control room, and I have this from 3 separate examiners, each of whom told it as a story about himself, the board jumped 5,000 points in one tick, and nobody could explain it, because they could not see in. All they had was a number climbing like a launched rocket, and Liu Zhen standing very still behind them with one eyelid going. The second wave did not wait for me to be ready. The sky went red and dropped fire on us. Meteors the size of carts, coming down in a curtain, and my front rank went to shields. They did that themselves. I did not order it, and I would not have thought of it. They folded into a roof over my head and took the whole barrage, and the sparks came off them like a foundry floor. Behind the fire, orc mages. Behind the mages, orc warriors at a dead run. 10 skeletons for the fire, 10 for the charge. 5,000 strength and 5,000 agility apiece by then, which meant that when I sent them at the mage line ceased to exist at a speed that made me briefly and genuinely sorry for it. My skeletons crossed 60 meters as a blur. The fire rain stopped in the middle of falling, and the last few meteors landed on nothing. 14,605. The control room, per the examiners, spent that entire minute arguing about whether the equipment had failed. Then the ground shook, and the world got worse. Phase 2. I found out later what Phase 2 actually is, and it explains why the record had stood for a century. The monster level goes up by 1, which sounds like nothing. The count doubles, which sounds like arithmetic. And then they add archers. Every one of those 3 changes is aimed at a different kind of candidate. The level bump beats anybody who scraped through Phase 1 on the edge of their damage. The doubling beats anybody whose skills have a cooldown, because a cooldown that was survivable against 100 is fatal against 200. And the archers beat mages, which is most of the people who get this far, because a mage is a person who is very powerful right up until something puts an arrow in them from 90 meters. That is why 100 years of the best 18-year-olds in the Empire have stopped at Phase 2. It is not 1 wall. It is 3 walls, and each one is built for a different person. 40 squads spread out around me in a wide ring, 3 fighters and 2 archers each, 200 monsters, and they came in from every side at once under a sky the color of a bruise. I had stopped thinking about them as monsters by then. I want to be honest about that, because it is the first place where I can see the shape of what I turned into. Somewhere in the previous 4 minutes, they had quietly reclassified in my head from enemy to supply. I ran the pull again. Wider this time, and slower, my skeleton scattering out across the black in every direction while I stood at the edge of it with my hands in my pockets and waited for the shape to be right. You have to wait for the shape. That is the part people never understand about what I do. Anybody can throw a bomb. The whole art is in the 20 seconds before it, in the arrangement, in making 200 separate creatures decide of their own free will to stand close together in a place you have chosen. The chain took 4 seconds, and the sound of it went on for 11. 34,605. Nobody in the recorded history of the Shenxia Empire's Great Exam has ever passed the 3rd stage of battle space. That record is over 100 years old. It was set by somebody whose name is on a plate somewhere. I was standing in Stage 2 with 34,000 points and a supply problem, and my honest internal thought at that moment, I have never told anybody this, not even Liu Jia, was, I hope Stage 3 has more of them. That is when the sky opened. Here is what was happening 1,000 kilometers away while I was standing on black dirt wishing for more orcs. I got it later, in pieces, from people who were there and who all told it in the same flat voice. The trial tower that comes down over the provinces on exam day is a copy. The original hangs over Xiajing City, the capital, and on exam day the whole city can see it, and on that particular exam day, the sky over Xiajing City went dark at noon. Something came down out of it, a light, if you can call a thing that black a light, and it was aimed at the tower. A hand appeared in the air to stop it, an actual hand, the size of a city block, made of nothing. It caught the light and both of them came apart. Then the light split. Half of it went at the second thing that arrived, which was an eye. The other half accelerated, and inside it there was a face, horns, teeth, exactly the way the school books draw it, and everybody assumes the school books are exaggerating. They crushed the head. That part they managed. But the head laughed while they were doing it and said the 2 sentences that got repeated in every office in the Empire for a month afterwards. This is just an avatar. Kill it as you please. And then, but those little ones in your tower. 3 figures were standing in the air beside the trial tower by then. One of them reached into it and came out with the bad news, which was that the abyss had gotten a consciousness inside. Not a body, a will, riding in on the tower's own rules. And the reason it worked, the specific reason, is that the floor of battle space is real battlefield dirt. And where do you think a battlefield that soaks a floor black comes from? They had taken the abyss's own ground and built the examination on it. For 100 years, that had been a clever piece of engineering, and on that particular morning, it turned out to have been a door with the key left in it. The man who was holding the tower together was named Tang Wen. I would meet him eventually. He said he could fix the rules, and that it would take an hour, and that during that hour there was no way to reach inside, not to pull anybody out, not to send anybody in, not so much as a message. Yang Shen asked what was in there. 120 of them, said Tang Wen. 18 years old, the 5 best out of every province in the Empire. I am told nobody said anything for a moment after that. Then Divine Yang said, and this is the line that got repeated in offices for a month, Then we tell them the truth, and we let them fight. Which is not what most people expected. Most people expected comfort. Inside, all I knew was that the monsters vanished. Not died. Vanished, mid-stride, all of them. And the black plane went quiet in a way it had not been quiet since I walked in. Then the light came, and people started appearing. Not 5, over 100. Kids in every provincial uniform in the country dropped onto that plane from wherever their own battle space had been, blinking, some of them mid-swing. Jian the Steadfast, Mei Ling came out of the dark at a jog with both fireballs up, and I have never been happier to hear somebody insult me. My skeletons opened a gap in the wall for her without being told, closed it behind her, and she looked around at the inside of a bone ring and said, "What is happening?" "I don't know." "You always know." "Not this time." Then a voice came out of the sky, and it was not an examiner's voice. "Children." Every head on that plane came up. "I am Yang Shun." Somebody screamed. A lot of somebodies. I did not, but I want to be clear about what that name means, because if you are not from the Shenxia Empire, it does not land. Yang Shun is not a famous professional. Yang Shun is what the Empire has instead of a weather system. People call him Divine Yang, and they do not do it as a joke. And there are maybe a handful of human beings alive at his level, and none of them are in the habit of talking to 18-year-olds. "The demons of the abyss have entered battle space," he said. "We are repairing the rules. It will take approximately 1 hour." 120 kids went very quiet. "They are here for you, specifically. I do not know what they will use. Protect each other for 1 hour." A pause. "The people of the Shenxia Empire do not fear war and are not afraid to die." The plane shouted it back at him. All of them, 3 times, and it rolled around that black bowl like weather. Mei Ling's hand came halfway up and then stopped because she looked at me and I was not shouting. I was not shouting because I was already doing arithmetic. "They are here for you, specifically," means the thing coming has a purpose. 1 hour means it has a deadline. And if the strongest man in the Empire says protect yourselves rather than we are coming in, then nobody is coming in. Also, quietly, in the part of my head that had been eating well all week, "They are here for you" means they are coming to me. A blood moon came up over the plain. I want to describe it properly. It was not red light. It was a hole in the lid of the sky, hanging maybe 200 meters up, and the light that came out of it made everybody's skin look like meat, and the smell of the ground got worse. Then the voice started, and the voice was having a wonderful time. "Not bad at all," it said. "It's a pity you're all going to die." Nobody answered it. "An hour is plenty. I can't take the bodies home, which is a shame. Young human flesh is the best there is." Somebody behind me started crying, quietly, which I did not blame them for. "Your Divine Yang says if you unite, you'll be fine." A laugh like a drain. "Let's find out. There are about 100 of you. Here are 100 of mine. 1 each. Shall we make it a tournament? Like your little competitions? Winner lives, loser dies." They came out of the moonlight in a line that did not end. Feline orc warriors. The same species I had been farming all afternoon, except these were level 19. The ceiling of battle space, the highest the rules allow, and they had been changed. 3 meters tall, barbs down the tail. Something wrong with the shape of the head. Every one of them was an enhanced elite, which is nightmare dungeon difficulty, which is a thing a 12-man raid handles carefully. There were 100, and they walked, slowly, because they had an hour too. The line of candidates went backwards without deciding to. I want to describe what happened to that group, because it is the whole reason the next 20 minutes went the way they did, and because it is the reason one of them lost his future. 120 of the most gifted 18-year-olds in the Shenxia Empire had formed up beautifully when Divine Yang spoke. Knights at the front, mages and archers behind. Somebody had even started calling out spacing. They were shouting his slogan back at the sky, and they meant it, and if you had photographed them at that moment, you would have had a recruitment poster. Then 100 3-meter monsters walked out of a hole in the sky, slowly, on purpose, taking their time. And the formation came apart into 2 tiers, not by class and not by level, but by legs. Zhou Cheng was in the back tier. Chalk white, retreating in small steps, not aware that he was doing it, still holding his weapon perfectly correctly. Gao Li was in the front one, sword out, jaw set, not moving a centimeter. Shulan was beside him, small and cold-faced, both daggers reversed in her hands. I do not think the back tier were cowards. I have thought about this for a long time, and I want to say it properly. They were children who had never seen anything try to kill them, standing in front of 100 enhanced elites, being told by a voice from the sky that nobody was coming. The people who decide evaluations do not care about that distinction. They watched the replay, and they saw who moved forward and who moved back, and that was that. Mei Ling grabbed my sleeve. What do we do? Judging by the size, I said, they're enhanced elites. That is not comforting. It's not meant to be comforting. It's an assessment. And then I started walking toward them, because an enhanced elite is a nightmare dungeon monster, and I had spent 9 days learning that a nightmare dungeon monster is not a threat. It is inventory. What are you doing? Mei Ling hissed. What are you doing? Go back. No. Fine. About a dozen others came with us. Gao Li, Shu Lan, 9 or 10 more whose names I never got and have regretted not getting ever since because I owe them something. They came out into the open against 100 enhanced elite monsters with no plan whatsoever, no formation, and no reason to believe it would work, purely and entirely because somebody had started walking and they did not want to be the ones who did not. That is not a small thing. I have seen adults in guild colors fail that test with a healer behind them. They also had no idea what I was. Every one of them thought they were walking out there to die well. I stopped 50 meters short. Why are you stopping? Gao Li said. Corpse Explosion, at that point, had a 100-meter throw and a 20-meter blast. 50 meters is where I can reach them and they cannot reach me. It is not bravery, it is a measurement, and I had made it 3 seconds after the line came out of the moon. Have you figured it out yet? Said the thing in the sky, delighted. The gates of the abyss are always open for you. Come and be my servant. I raised 100 skeletons. They came up out of that black dirt all at once, in ranks, dark bronze under a red moon, 100 sets of soul flame lighting at the same instant, and the kids behind me made a sound I can still hear. So many. How does he have... The skeletons crossed 50 meters in under 2 seconds. 14 of them hit the same orc together and it went down, and I felt the thing I had been waiting to feel, which was the click of having one. Then I let go. The first blast took 12. Those 12 were now 12 bombs. The chain went down that line the way a rumor goes through a school, and the pressure of it knocked the standing candidates flat behind me, and the light of it turned the underside of the blood moon white. 11 detonations, maybe 8 seconds. 100 corrupted enhanced elites, gone. The plane was silent, except for dirt falling. Somewhere behind me, a boy said, "We're saved," in a cracked voice. And then the whole terrified back tier of the Shenxia Empire's finest teenagers started shouting at once. And in the sky, the thing that had been enjoying itself so much stopped enjoying itself. Impossible. That's impossible. I was not listening. I had just checked my experience bar and found that it had moved, which meant the corrupted orcs counted, which meant this was not a fight anymore. It was a training ground with a schedule. The moon flared and the second wave came, and this time it did not come at me. It scattered, 100 more of them, going wide, going around, going for the candidates. Those kids ran. Battle space is enormous. They had room, and running was correct. I looked up at the blood moon instead. There was a shadow on it, a shape, dead center, sitting in the light the way a spider sits in the middle of the web, and it had been up there the entire time. 200 meters. My throw is 100. So I had a skeleton throw a corpse at it, and then I had another skeleton throw me. I would like to report that I planned the flight. I did not. I went up off 2 bone hands at a speed that emptied my lungs, chasing an orc's body through red light with the plane dropping away under me, and I thought, distinctly, this is the stupidest thing anyone has ever done at a national examination. At the top of the arc, when the corpse was level with the shadow, I let go of. The airburst lit that entire plane white from above. Everybody on the ground stopped running. The thing in the moon screamed. It did not die. "I'll kill you! I'll kill you!" So I put a soul fire in it on the way down, and it screamed differently. I hit the dirt, rolled, came up, and something turned over in my chest. Corpse Explosion, level 2. Skills level with use. Nobody had told me that, and I had been using this one very hard, and it picked that exact moment to grow. 1 meter to 2 meters, 10% to 15, which after amplification meant 40 meters of radius at 300%. And then white light came up around me, because the corrupted orcs had been feeding me the whole time, and I went up a level standing in a crater at the national exam. The kids on the plane saw the light and understood what it meant, and the noise they made was not fear at all. The second wave died the way the first one did, only faster, because 40 meters is a very big number when the enemy has spread out to avoid a 20-meter one. That is a thing I have noticed about clever opponents ever since. They adapt to the version of you they have already seen. I ran the numbers on the candidates while the dust was still coming down, because it had occurred to me that 120 of them were standing on this plane with nothing to do, and they were the best 5 from every province in the empire. Then I decided against it, and I want to record why, because it is not a kind reason. If I told them to fight, they would fight. Gao Li would go first, and then somebody's daughter would get caught by an enhanced elite in the dark, and there would be a body on the ground next to a person who detonates bodies, and I did not know what my own blast radius did to a friendly, because I had never had one. I have thought about that a great deal since. The first time I ever chose not to use people, I did it out of a technical concern about splash damage, which threw the shadow in the moon, and the shadow in the moon could not leave. I know it could not leave because it stopped threatening. 5 corpses went up. My skeletons threw them in a spread, and I went up after them one more time, and at the top of the arc, with everything lined up under a hole in the sky, the voice spoke again, quiet now, and almost pleasant, which was so much worse. Your name is Jian Yu. Yes. I will remember you. A laugh, small and private. When you come to the abyss, I will treat you well. I set off all 5. The blood moon broke like a dropped mirror, and the pieces went out before they hit the ground, and the lid of the sky over battle space turned back into an ordinary miserable gray, and it was over. 120 candidates, 0 casualties. I found out much later what that hour looked like from the outside, a man holding a tower together in the capital, and beside him another man who suddenly said, "The interference is collapsing," and Divine Yang's face when he worked out that it was not collapsing on its own. They put us back in the plaza and told us to wait for scores. There are 2 halves to an exam result, points and evaluation. Points you earn, and the machine gives them to you, and nobody can argue. Evaluation is a grade that a human being assigns, and for anybody who reached battle space, the human beings who assign it are not provincial examiners. They are the people at the very top of the Shenxia Empire. They sit down and watch the replay of your 5th round, and then they write one word, and that word decides which doors open. Xiajing Academy requires excellent. So does every top 20 academy in the country. The board went up over the plaza in letters 4 meters tall. First, Lin Mo Yo, 34,605 points. Evaluation, excellent. 200,000 people made a noise I felt in my back teeth. Up in the gallery, Principal Song Hai came off his chair like a man ejected from an aircraft, and I could hear him over the entire plaza, which should not have been physically possible. First, top scorer, provincial top scorer. Elder Song, sit down. I will not sit down. In 40 years of Elder Song, your face is doing the thing again. My face has earned this. Second was Mei Ling, 7,600 points. Evaluation, excellent. In any other year, in any other province, that is the story of the decade. Rare class, top of her cohort, a name the academies will fight over. She stood in front of that board and looked at the gap between the 2 numbers, 34,000 against 7,000, for a long moment. Then she turned around and stuck her hand out. Congratulations, top scorer. There was no poison in it at all. I have thought about that more than almost anything else that happened that year, because I do not think I could have done it. And I have since watched grown men in guild halls fail that exact test at a fraction of the stakes. I shook her hand. You can smile, she said, examining my face like a specimen under glass. Look at that. Why don't you do that normally? I did smile. When? Just then, on the inside. A fool, said Mei Ling, is a fool. Gao Li came third and Shulan came fourth, both excellent. They both came over to thank me for the thing on the black plane, which was awkward for everybody involved. Gao Li shook my hand with both of his and said he owed me his life. I said it was nothing, which was true, and apparently the wrong thing, because he got emotional. Mei Ling had to step in and explain to them that I had exchanged 16 sentences with her over 3 years of shared classes, and that this was normal and not personal. 16, said Gao Li. 16, said Mei Ling. 17, I said. Shulan laughed out loud, which, judging from Gao Li's expression, she does not do. Fifth was Zhou Cheng. 6,300 points. Evaluation. Poor. The plaza saw it about half a second before he did. Poor is not a bad grade. Poor is a door closing. No top academy, no top 20, no top 100, and Dynasty Guild money cannot reach it, because the one thing in the Shenxia Empire that money has never been able to touch is the examination. It came down to the Black Plane. That is all it was. Somebody at the very top of the country had watched a replay of a demon offering 100 children a tournament and had noted who walked forward and who walked backward, and had written one word in a box. Why? Said Zhou Cheng. Then, at the sky, at volume. Why? This is not fair. You are being unfair. I demand. A beam of light came down. Candidate Zhou Cheng has violated examination regulations. Expelled. He was not there anymore. 200,000 people stood in total silence in a plaza, and the wind came through it. I stood there and thought about 40 men in matching cloaks standing across the mouth of a public dungeon on that boy's errand, about a farmer with his hat in his hands, about a job order pinned to a government wall offering 1% of value to whoever was ignorant enough to take it. And I did not feel very much of anything, and I have decided not to examine that too closely. But I will note one thing, because it is the only part of it that has ever bothered me. Zhou Cheng did not lose his future at that dungeon. He lost it on a black plane when 100 monsters walked out of a hole in the sky and his legs made a decision without asking him. He was 18. He had never been in a real fight in his life because his father's guild had made very sure he would never have to be. 40 men stood in front of a door so that he would not have to earn something, and then somebody put him in a room with the abyss and graded him on courage. I do not feel sorry for him. I want to be clear about that. I am only observing that his father built exactly the boy who failed that test and then took him apart in a guild hall for failing it. Then the examiner's voice came back on. Combat category, Jiangning Province Champion for this year's great exam, Jian Yu. Applause like weather coming in off the sea. And then, while it was still going, by order of the Empire, Jian Yu is named this year's national top scorer. Principal Song Hai made a sound I can only describe as steam escaping. National? He could not get through the sentence. Yu is the national... Elder Song, breathe. He is the national top scorer of the Shenxia Empire, and he has a hole in his roof. I had not known he knew about the roof. They teleported us home that evening. Principal Song Hai stayed behind because the support class examinations ran another 2 days, and he had students in those as well, and he waved at me from the observation gallery like a man on a departing ship. I got back to the house at dusk. I put a pot on the working burner. I stood there for a while looking at the tarp with the brick on it, and did the arithmetic on what a roof costs, which I had never once been able to do before, and I got as far as thinking that I could probably have it done properly, with tiles, before winter. Somebody knocked. I opened the door and every hair on my body stood up at once. There were 2 people outside. One of them was Court Song Hai, back early, wearing the expression of a man who has been struck by lightning and enjoyed the experience. The other one I could not see properly because the air around him was wrong. It pressed, it got into my lungs and made a decision about whether I would be permitted to keep breathing, and my body did not wait for my opinion on the matter. A skeleton came up out of my kitchen floor between us before I knew I had done it. A very good response, said the dark, and the pressure vanished like a switch being thrown. I knew the voice. I had heard it 3 days earlier, coming out of the sky over black dirt, telling 100 terrified children that the Shenxia Empire does not fear war. I bowed. Divine Yang. Yang Shen stepped into the light of my kitchen. He was a big man who moved like a much smaller one, and he was looking at my skeleton with completely open interest, the way you look at a new tool. How did you know it was me? Your voice. He laughed at that, loudly, in a house that had not had a laugh in it for 2 years. Then he looked around. I watched him do it, and I watched him take his time. The 2-burner stove with 1 burner. The tarp and the brick and the paint can. The cracked photograph on the wall with 3 people in it. 2 of whom are dead or gone. The table with a national top scorer's certificate lying on it, and nothing else at all, because there was nothing else. "Please excuse the arrangement, sir," said Principal Songhai, far too fast. "His sister went up to Xiajing Academy last year. He has been living here alone since." "His sister is at Xiajing Academy?" "Jianhua, admitted last year, provincial first in her own year." Yang Shun filed that. I watched him file it. He said something polite about 2 siblings out of one house, and then sat down at my table on a chair that was not equal to the occasion, and asked to see my summon properly. The skeleton stood there and let itself be looked at. 250 in all 4 attributes, he said eventually. Unremarkable. So how did you do that in battle space? And that is the moment I learned the single most useful fact of my life. He could not see my talent. He was reading base numbers. Everybody was, always, every detection anybody had ever run on me. The amplification is mine, and it is invisible from the outside, and the strongest man in the Shenxia Empire was sitting in my kitchen reading the label instead of the bottle. My talent amplifies my skills, I said, which is true, and which leaves out the multiplier, which is also a kind of true. Yang Shun nodded and did not push, and the fact that he did not push told me he had noticed exactly where I stopped. 2 reasons I came, he said. First, your prizes. They are meant to be handed over at the academy, but since I am sitting here, light moved in his hand and things appeared on my table. 100,000 points on top of the points you earned. That is the National Top Scorer Award. Points are the real currency inside Xiajing Academy. Gold buys food, points buy everything else. And you will find out very quickly what everything else includes. 1 beginner skill scroll, 1 intermediate skill scroll. He said intermediate the way a man says the word car. And this one is not standard. This is for your 5th round specifically. 1 entry to the Shenxia Tower. What's the tower? You will find out at the academy. What I will tell you tonight is that a first entry is worth more than everything else on this table combined, and you should not walk into it unprepared. People have. I looked at a table with more value sitting on it than the house it was standing in. Second reason, said Yang Shen, there is a trial in 2 days. It is internal, Xiajing Academy's own students, the ones the academy raised itself from 12 years old, not incoming first years. You are not qualified to attend it. I am giving you the slot anyway. I would like you to go. I sat with that. He had not said what the trial was. He had said the participants were insiders, which meant somebody currently qualified was about to become unqualified. And he had said he would like me to go, not that I would go, which meant it was a real question. What's the trial? I can tell you after you agree, which meant it was worth hiding, which meant it was worth having. I'll go. Good, said Yang Shen, and stood up, and my ceiling suddenly seemed a great deal lower than it had that morning. Bring what you need. We leave now. I looked around the house. There was nothing to bring. Principal Songhai stood in the doorway while a teleportation array wrote itself across my kitchen floor in lines of light. He did not say anything wise. He put his hand on my shoulder once, hard, and let go. The last thing I saw of that house was him standing alone in it, reaching over to switch off the working burner. Long-range teleportation is not like the stone that took me to Zhanghai City. It takes about 15 seconds, and you spend all of them watching pieces of somewhere else go past, and your inner ear resigns. I did not throw up. Yang Shun noticed that I did not throw up and looked pleased about it, which I found out later was because most people do. Then my feet hit stone and I was standing in front of a gate. Xiajing Academy's front gate is tens of meters high and hundreds wide, and it is the most frightening piece of architecture I have ever stood in front of, including things that were actively trying to eat me. I felt it before I understood it. There is a sense you develop, after enough dungeons, for the difference between a wall and a weapon. It is both, said Yang Shun, without being asked. Top-tier experts have tried the gate. It costs them. Something swept over me, not a detection, something older and less polite, checked what I was, and the gate opened without a sound. It was past midnight, and the academy was awake. That is what I remember from the first night. Not the size, although the size is absurd. It took us 20 minutes to walk to the dormitories. What I remember is that at 1 in the morning, in every direction, there were flickers of light over the rooftops and the low crack and hum of skills going off, hundreds of them, all night, because 10,000 students were in there practicing. Do all skills have to be practiced? I asked. Most. Some cannot be, and nobody knows why. He glanced sideways. Your teachers will explain properly. I am not one. One more thing, he said as we came into the residential district. In this academy, almost everything can be traded. Skills, information, dungeon slots, favors. That is deliberate, and it is good for you. But it only works on free agreement. Nobody here forces a sale. And if somebody tries? Then it stops being a trade, said Yang Shun, and becomes a discipline matter. And the discipline office is very fast. He glanced sideways at me, and something in his face was amused. I mention it because you are 18. You are the national top scorer, and by tomorrow lunchtime, 100 people will know both of those things. He handed me off to a third year named Chen Long, who had clearly been waiting a very long time and did not dare say so, and then Yang Shun walked into the dark and was simply not there anymore. Chen Long explained points to me. 4-person dorm, 500 points a month. 2-person, 1,000. Single, 2,000. The detached houses are tens of thousands. You can pay in gold instead, at 100 gold to the point, which is another way of saying you cannot pay in gold. Honest advice, said Chen Long, who was a nice guy having a long night. Whatever you got from your exam, save it. Everybody blows it in the first month on a nice room, and then finds out what the training halls cost. Single, please. He sighed the sigh of a man who has given the same speech 900 times. He walked me to Building 8, second floor, took my card and swiped it. The machine beeped and displayed my balance. Chen Long made a noise like a kettle. How do you have? He picked the machine up and looked at the back of it. I have been here 2 years. I have earned 9,000 points in 2 years. That says 133,000. It's a reward. He put the machine down very carefully, the way you set down something that belongs to someone else. Room 201, he said in a new voice. Anything you need, at all, any hour. Then, at the door, he added, buy a communicator tomorrow or you will not survive the week. I asked one question before he left. Have you heard of Manhwa? Chen Long thought about it and shook his head. There are 10,000 of us. Ask the Academic Affairs Office. The room was small and clean and had a bed in it. I sat on the bed and summoned 4 skeletons and put them away, one after another, because in a building full of sleeping strangers, I could not think of anything else to do with myself. Somebody knocked at 7 in the morning. Liu Jia was standing in my doorway with her hood down, grinning. What? She said. Don't recognize me? I recognize you. You have the face again. She turned around and started walking. Breakfast. I'm starving. Then I'm showing you the whole academy, and then we're going somewhere, and you don't get a vote. She took roughly 9 dishes at the cafeteria. When it came time to pay, I put my card down and it beeped and took 5 points, and Liu Jia made a sound like she had been stabbed. Points? You paid for breakfast with points? I don't have gold. You should have said. She was genuinely upset, which I found funny and did not show. Points are for things you cannot buy. Gold is for food. If you can pay gold, you pay gold. Say it back to me. Points should be spent wisely. Yes, thank you. Then I put the Goblin King's crystal core on the table between the plates. Liu Jia stopped chewing. It sat there in the morning light like a plum-sized ruby with a fire inside it, and she picked it up and turned it over, and her eyes went wide and stayed wide. This is for you. This is the Goblin King's core. Yes. Do you know what it's worth? I told her the number the exchange board had posted, 100,000 gold. Then I told her the number the food stall man had guessed, 500,000, and mentioned that the Dynasty Guild had blockaded a dungeon over it. Liu Jia put the core down and looked at me with an expression of such pure pity that I actually reviewed the last thing I had said. It's the core stone of the Goblin King's ring, she said. It's a boss accessory component. If you listed it properly, it would go for about 10 million. I did the arithmetic. The exchange had been offering 1%. The Dynasty Guild had stood 40 armed men in front of a public dungeon and killed a province's worth of goodwill and gotten a young master expelled from his own future over an errand where they intended to pay 1% of value to some kid who did not know any better. They were robbing people, I said. Welcome to the exchange, said Liu Jia, and put my 10 million gold gift in her jacket without one word of protest, because she had already worked out that arguing with me about gifts was a losing game. Thanks. Eat your egg. She walked me around the academy for half a day, and I saw perhaps a tenth of it. 2 exchanges, the Imperial one, inside the walls, where gold works and anybody can trade, and the Academy one, where gold is not accepted at all, and the shelves have things on them that the Imperial Exchange has never heard of and is not permitted to stock. Dozens of skill training halls scattered across the grounds. They are rooms that thicken the ambient energy so your spirit recovers faster while you practice, and they cost points by the hour, and every single one of them had a queue at 11 in the morning on a day with no classes. The Xiajing Library, which is said to rival the Imperial Library, and which I did not believe until I stood in it. The ground floor is free, the upper floors are not, and the price goes up as you climb, and Liu Jia told me that most students in their first 2 years never get above the 2nd floor. A whole district of forges, alchemy halls, and workshops for life classes, which I had assumed were a joke until I watched a level 40 blacksmith turn something I could not identify into a sword and get paid in points that would have covered my rent for a year. And everywhere, on every board, prices. Everything costs points. The only 2 things Xiajing Academy gives you for nothing are food and a bed, and I worked out by lunchtime that this is not stinginess, it is design. They feed you and they house you so that you cannot die, and then they price the ladder so that the only way up is to be worth something to them. How do people afford this? I asked. They don't, said Liu Jia cheerfully. That's the point. You do missions for the academy. You earn contribution points on top of regular points, and contribution points are the ones that actually matter, and you can't buy those with anything. She swung her arms. The academy has 10,000 students, and about 300 of them will ever get into a top academy. This is how they find out which 300. Then we went to the academic affairs office, and I asked about my sister. The clerk searched. Then he searched again, and turned the screen slightly away, which is a thing people do. There is an enrollment record, he said. Jianhua, admitted last year, combat category. And there is nothing else. What does nothing else mean? It means the file is blank, young man, he said, not unkindly. I cannot tell you where she lives, what her class is, what her level is, or whether she is on campus. I can tell you she exists. I stood there for a while. Outside, Liu Jia walked next to me for 100 meters without saying anything, which for her is an act of great generosity. Blank is normal, she said eventually. Blank is not normal. Blank is normal in 3 cases, she held up fingers. 1, she's on a classified assignment for the academy, and there are a lot of those, and the file goes dark for the duration. 2, she left the academy, and I don't mean dropped out. There are more than a dozen sub-academies inside Xiajing that look like they're part of it and are actually walled off. Chuangshen, Shenlong, Feiqian, others. If you join one of those, your main file goes blank the same day. She dropped her hand. 3 is bad, and I'm not going to say it because 1 and 2 are much more likely. The last time Jianhua called was 3 months ago. So she's probably behind a wall, I said. She's probably behind a wall. Then I'll get over the wall. Liu Jia looked at me sideways with an expression I could not read at the time and said, yeah, I think you probably will. And then she grabbed my sleeve and towed me across campus, because we were late for the thing I had agreed to without knowing what it was. Qianlong Academy is one of the mid-tier sub-academies, and its courtyard was full of people forming teams. A tall woman came over the moment she saw Liu Jia. Jia, that's him? That's him, Jian Yu, national top scorer this year. Liu Jia hooked an arm through the tall woman's. This is our captain. Chen Mei, 23, Elf Knight. Jian Yu, 17, Necromancer. Chen Mei's face did not move, which I appreciated. Somebody else's did. 17? A man came into the courtyard carrying a staff, and he had the walk. Are you joking? If you're going to drag someone along, don't scrape them off the pavement. Han Kai, said Liu Jia in a completely different voice. Watch your mouth. He's the national top scorer. A national top scorer, Han Kai laughed. I have met national top scorers. They were all garbage. He looked around the courtyard for support and got it. From about 6 people wearing the specific expression of insiders. Listen, whatever your name is, I know Divine Yang put you here. Don't imagine that means anything. In this team, we go by strength. You can come. Keep your mouth shut, stand at the back, and do not slow us down, or you and I are going to have a problem. I looked at him for a moment. Idiot? The staff lit up, actual flame, in a courtyard, and a wave of heat came off it that moved everybody's hair. Liu Jia got in front of me before I had finished the word. Chen Mei got in front of Han Kai a half-second later, and she did not raise her voice. Han Kai, stop. The fire went out. Fine, he said. For you, Captain. He walked off, and the courtyard went back to its business, and Chen Mei turned to me with the flat expression of a woman managing a problem. 9 tomorrow, right here. I'll brief the trial then. Liu Jia dragged me out by the elbow. Don't engage with that one, she said. His little brother had the slot you're standing in. Divine Yang took it and gave it to you, so as far as Han Kai is concerned, you personally reached into his family and took something. I did. Yes, but you're supposed to feel complicated about it. If a dog bites a man, I said, the man doesn't bite the dog. Liu Jia laughed so hard she had to stop walking. We went to the Imperial Exchange, and I sold everything the West Sea Mine had ever given me, the whole 9 days of it, and it came to 230,000 gold, which was more money than had ever existed in my family. I spent 20,000 on potions because Liu Jia insisted. Then I spent 200,000 on 2 beginner skill scrolls and walked out with 10,000 gold to my name, and Liu Jia looked at me like I had set fire to a car. That night, I burned the first scroll in room 201. Light came up around me. It went on for 4 or 5 seconds, which is long enough to start hoping. Nothing. That is normal. That is completely normal, and it is 100,000 gold, and I sat there on the edge of a bed in a room I was paying 2,000 points a month for and let myself feel it for about 10 seconds. A scroll is a lottery ticket. The more skills you already have, the worse the odds get, which is exactly why most professionals learn 4 things and then stop learning for the rest of their lives. Not because they run out of ambition, but because at some point the ticket price stops being survivable. I have had people tell me since that I am lucky. I am. I want to be honest that I am, but I also spent every coin I had ever earned in one afternoon on 2 lottery tickets in a country where that same money would have put tiles on my roof. I burned the second one. The light came up and my chest went hot and something arrived. Slow curse, level 1. Curse everything within 5 meters, reducing speed by 5% for 1 minute. 5%. A rounding error. 100,000 gold for a rounding error. Times 20. 100 meters. 100%. 20 minutes. I sat on the edge of my bed in a room the size of a bathroom and worked out what 100% speed reduction actually means, and it does not mean slower. Attack speed is speed. A thing that has been cursed does not swing at half rate, it swings at nothing, and it moves at nothing, and it stands there in the middle of the fight like a photograph of itself. 3 families of skill: summoning, attack, curse. I lay back on the bed and thought, with real feeling, whatever is at that trial tomorrow, I am very sorry. At 9 the next morning, the sky over Qianlong Academy filled up with a tower. Not the trial tower, the other one. The Shenxia Tower, which is the thing everybody in this academy talks around, and it appeared as an outline in the air that reached from the ground to wherever the sky stops, and a beam came down out of the spire and took 10 teams at once. 15 seconds of somewhere else, then salt air. I grew up on a coast. I know the sound of surf the way you know your own heartbeat, and my first thought when my feet landed was that they had sent me home. Liu Jia's hands were gripping my arm. She was the color of paper. I hate teleportation, she said with feeling. I hate it. Next time we find a trial nearby. You get used to it, said Chen Mei, and then glanced at me, because I had not so much as swayed, and I saw her adjust something in her head. We were on a beach. Behind us, ocean. In front of us, a light curtain covering an entire island, and beyond the curtain, a peak with a waterfall coming off it, and a spinning vortex at the top. There were 10 teams from Qianlong Academy on that beach, and we were number 2. And looking down the line, I finally understood what Yang Shen had meant by insiders. Every one of them was a rare class. Not one common combat class in 60 people. There was a second prophet 3 teams down, and an elf elder, and something with wings I never got the name of, and the general standard of equipment was the sort of thing that makes you check your own sleeves. These are the children the academy raised itself. Spotted at 11 or 12, brought inside, educated, resourced, job changed under supervision by people who know how to nudge the circle. Liu Jia is the same age as me and was already 19 when I met her at level 9. Chen Mei is 1 year older than both of us, and she was 23. That is what the resource gap looks like from the bottom of it. A stone floated in front of each of us. When I closed my hand on mine, I knew the whole assignment at once. Mermaid Island. Cross it. Climb it. Enter the Mermaid Tier's dungeon at the top, on Nightmare difficulty, kill the queen, and take a mermaid's tear. 3 conditions, and all 3 mattered. 1. A team's average level cannot exceed 20. Average, not individual, which means to bring a strong knight, you have to bring somebody weak. That is the specific hole I had been slotted into, and it is why Han Kai's brother was at home. 2. The tier only drops on Nightmare. Normal difficulty gets you a walk. 3. There are only 3 tiers. Ever. Per year. First 3 teams to clear it, and then the dungeon is done. Mermaid Island isn't in Shenxia territory, Chen said, and now she sounded tense. Every year, other countries come. 10 teams from our academy alone are on this beach. We are number 2. What do we do if we run into them? Liu Jia asked. Kill them? Everybody flinched, except me, which Liu Jia noticed and enjoyed. It has happened, said Chen Mei. It is rare. Usually they just block the door. She clapped her hands. Wu Hao, buffs. Wu Hao was our prophet, which is a support class so rare that most professionals never meet one. He started throwing halos, and my 4 stats went up 30% apiece, and my skills got 20% stronger, all of it lasting an hour, and I finally understood why teams fight over these people. Then I summoned a skeleton and asked him to buff it. The temperature dropped. Fang Jie, our healer, screamed and got behind Chen Mei. Wu Hao's hands shook so hard he dropped the skill he was already casting. Is that yours? Can you buff it? He tried. The halo landed on my skeleton and slid off like water off wax. He tried 4 more times. I can't, he said. It won't take. Can't even take a buff, said Han Kai. What a waste of a slot. I looked at him. I did not do anything else, but the skeleton turned its head and the soul flames in its sockets went from white to red, and the cold came off the sand in a wave, and Han Kai took a step backward before he knew he was doing it and had a staff on fire in his hand. Chen Mei got between us for the 2nd time in 24 hours. After the trial, she said, fight all you like after the trial. The island smelled like a fish market in August and felt like breathing soup. Liu Jia covered her nose within 4 steps and did not uncover it for the next 2 hours. The whole place is pools, hundreds of them, some the size of a bath and some the size of a house, connected by narrow strips of sand, so that the only way across the island is a maze of causeways with water on both sides. And in the water, mermaids. Not the story kind, scaled, hunched, gray-green, with teeth that could take the corner off a paving stone and a smell like the bottom of a boat. Level 19, no skills at all, and no threat to a party like ours as long as we only had to deal with one at a time, which is exactly what the causeways are designed to prevent. The first one came up out of a pool while we were walking past it and went for Wu Hao, because supports always get picked, and Chen Mei had taunt on it before its head cleared the water. That is what a knight is. She insulted it, in a technical sense, and it forgot about our prophet entirely and came at her with its eyes gone red. Then charge, shield first, 10 meters in half a second, and it went backwards through the air and landed on sand. Mei Ling would have loved to watch it, actually. A fireball from Han Kai, a fatal strike from Liu Jia into the back of its ribs, an ice arrow to finish, and it was over in about 11 seconds with 5 people working. I did nothing at all, and nobody asked me to, and Han Kai made sure to look at me while he was cleaning his staff. Chen Mei ran that crossing well. I want to say that clearly, because of the way the rest of this goes. She kept us moving. She had Fang Jie bind anything skippable instead of fighting it, which is the correct call and costs a support class nothing. She read the causeways and picked lines that kept us out of pincers. 20 minutes in, the monsters went up to level 21, and the fight started taking a minute instead of 11 seconds, and she immediately stopped fighting entirely and started running us past everything. She made every correct decision available to a captain with the party she thought she had. Then we reached the foot of the mountain and stopped, because there was one path up, and on that path and in the pools around it, there were something like 300 mermaids at level 22, packed in like a garrison. Other teams were already there, working through the edge of it. We were behind. Fang Jie, can you control through that? Not a chance, Sister Mei. They're higher level than me, my binds will fail, and there are hundreds. Chen Mei stood there doing the arithmetic every captain hates. An hour of careful clearing and finish last, or charge in and get surrounded. I'll do it, I said. Han Kai laughed. You? What does a 17 do? Pull them. Chen Mei's head came around fast because she is not stupid, and Necromancer means summons, and summons mean you can put something disposable in front of a monster. Do it. One skeleton went down the path at a speed that made Chen Mei's eyes narrow. It hit the first pool, screamed the whole group awake, and then ran, not away, sideways, along the pools, waking each one in turn and gathering them, and inside of 2 minutes, it had over 100 mermaids strung out behind it in a screaming line like a parade. Then it ran off into the rocks, and I put it away. 100 monsters stopped, milled around, and looked for a target that was not there anymore. "Go," said Chen Mei, and we went, and we made the foot of the mountain clean. "Well done," she said, and Liu Jia grinned, and Wu Hao and Fang Jie both thanked me. Han Kai said, "Why didn't you do that at the beach? We'd be up the mountain by now." I turned and looked at him for a while. A mage is supposed to be the smart one. "This is the last time," I said. Then there was a scream from the top of the mountain, and everybody looked up, and the entire mountain came down at us, not rocks. Mermaids, hundreds of them, pouring down the path, and running in front of them was a man in robes embroidered with cherry blossoms. "Sakura country," said Chen Mei. "That one is an Onmyoji, legendary class." He threw 2 talismans and 2 things came out of the air, huge, translucent, shaped roughly like men and not at all like men, and dove down the mountainside, and every mermaid in every pool at the foot of the mountain came alive and converged. The Qianlong Academy teams that had been ahead of us got swallowed. I watched them try to break out, 3 separate teams, and then I watched the white light of emergency teleports go up one after another, 6, 9, 12 of them. Your quest stone is also your escape. Use it and you live. Use it and the trial is over for you. The Onmyoji sat down on top of one of his shikigami, floating 100 meters up, and laughed at us. "Stay down there," he called. "The dungeon belongs to my great Sakura country." Then he flew off. I want to give the Onmyoji his due, because that was a good piece of work. He did not fight anybody. He did not risk one member of his team. He spent 2 talismans, walked the entire population of a mountain down onto the only path up it, and in 90 seconds he took 4 Qianlong Academy teams out of the trial without landing a single blow, and then he left before anybody could reach him. Everything he did was legal. There is nothing in the trial rules about not pulling monsters. That is what a legendary class looks like when somebody has actually thought about it. It was also the first time I had ever been beaten by a person instead of a monster. And I was standing at the bottom of a mountain with 300 enemies on it, thinking, with genuine professional interest, I should learn to do that. 300 monsters between us and the top. Several hours of clearing, minimum, with every remaining team in shreds. Somebody could pull them, a boy from another team said without conviction. If somebody sacrificed, pull 300? Are you a level 40? Do you know what happens when a pull goes wrong? Let the summoner do it. He can hold 2, maybe 3. This isn't 20 monsters, it's 300. Chen Mei looked at me. Can it work? I sent a skeleton. The first one took a third of them off the mountain in 90 seconds. The remaining teams arguing stopped mid-sentence. The second skeleton went out and took most of the rest. 2, Chen Mei said. The third one went past her shoulder, and Liu Jia was outright beaming, and somebody in the crowd behind us shouted that they would buy me drinks for the rest of my life. Get ready to climb, I said. I could have cleared that mountain in about 11 seconds. I want to be honest about it, since I am being honest about everything else. 1 pull, 1 kill, 1 chain, and there would have been no monsters on that island at all. I did not do it because we were in a party, and party kills split experience, and 1/6 of that would have gone into Han Kai. I am not a nice person, I am a specific one. We went up the mountain at a run, and the other teams came behind us, and at the top we came out onto the summit with a dungeon vortex spinning in the middle of it, and at the exact same moment, the Sakura Country team came up the other side. Everybody stopped. Everybody looked at everybody. I got about 2 seconds to take them in, and they were not what I expected. Sakura Country's team did not look like villains. They looked exactly like us, 18 and 19 years old, sunburnt, exhausted, in team colors, with a healer at the back who was already crying from the climb. Then everybody ran for the door. Arrow rain, spell shields going up out of phase with each other, knights slamming into knights with a noise like a traffic accident. It was the least organized fight I have ever been in. 24 kids on each side, no formation, no ground chosen, both sets of healers screaming at people to stand still and be healed while nobody stood still. 2 of my skeletons stood in front of me and Liu Jia and took an arrow storm without moving. I did not fight. I have thought about that a lot. I stood at the back of a brawl with the ability to end it in 4 seconds, and I kept my hands in my pockets. Chen Mei had told me on the beach that this rarely gets anybody killed, which meant that if I put 1 skeleton into that scrum, somebody's kid was going home in a box, and then there would be a corpse lying on the ground next to a person who detonates corpses. The fight ran itself out. Mana ran dry. Skills went on cooldown. Both sides backed off 50 meters and sat down and glared, and nobody could get near the door. We're too broken up, a boy said. We need to reform. Anybody got a damage dealer to spare? We're short. Healer here, level 21 or under, anybody. Looking for a mage, 23 or under. Everybody was short a mage. There were 4 teams shouting for one. Han Kai stood up. Captain, he said, I'm switching teams. Chen Mei blinked. Why? He pointed at me. Either he leaves or I leave. Nobody said anything for a second. Wu Hao said, Han Kai, that's too far. Fang Jie said, if it wasn't for Jian Yu, we wouldn't be up here at all. Liu Jia called him a dog, in exactly those words. That's his business, said Han Kai. He was very comfortable. He had picked his moment beautifully, and he knew it. 4 teams want a mage right now. Nobody wants a 17. Captain, you choose. I had told him at the bottom of that mountain that it was the last time. He had assumed I meant the last time I would pull monsters for him. I had meant the last time I would speak to him at all, and I did not say one word during anything that came next. And it was a real choice, that is the thing. Without a damage dealer, Nightmare is impossible. Without me, the team's average level goes up, and a low-level body is easy to find. Every arrow on the board pointed the same way, and Chen Mei wanted Chuangshen Academy more than she wanted air. Liu Jia opened her mouth, and I put a hand on her arm, because I knew exactly what she was about to say, and I did not want her to have to. Chen Mei looked at Han Kai. She looked at me. She looked at the ground for about 4 seconds. Han Kai, she said, leave the group. His face did something remarkable. What? Captain, without me your trial is finished. Don't you want Chuangshen Academy? I want it very much, said Chen Mei. You've forgotten my class. Elf Knight. Knights have vows. It is not decoration, and it is not a personality trait. It is load-bearing. A knight who breaks faith with someone under their banner does not get to keep being a knight. Every person on that mountaintop had gotten there on my skeletons' backs, and she was not going to trade the man who carried them for a better damage number. Han Kai laughed, ugly and short. Fine. Don't regret it. He left the group and was hired inside of 90 seconds because everybody wanted a mage. I stood up. Let's go into the dungeon. Chen Mei stared at me. How? We can't get within 50 meters of that door. Come with me, I said, and started walking. The Sakura country line came up as soon as we moved. Go back. People of the Shenxia Empire, get away from that door. Bows came up. Staves came up. Chen Mei got her shield in front of me, and I could see her arm shaking. And Wu Hao and Fang Jie came anyway, which took more courage than anything I did that day. And Liu Jia strolled along beside me with her hands behind her back, saying, it's fine, don't worry, it's fine. From the Shenxia side, people started shouting at us to come back. From up on his Shikigami, Han Kai shouted, Idiot, are you looking for death? They fired. I pointed forward. 20 skeletons came up out of the rock around us in a ring, shoulder to shoulder, and the arrow storm and the spells hit that ring and stopped like rain on a roof. Both sides of the mountaintop stopped shouting. That many? What class is that? They're not even moving. Look at them. Nothing's getting through. I walked to the entry stone through a hail of everything 24 professionals could produce, with Chen Mei staring at the back of my head, and put my hand on it. Nightmare, I said. Everybody in. Inside, the dungeon smelled worse than the island, which I had not thought possible. Chen Mei let out a long breath. We're actually in. Told you, said Liu Jia. We're in with no damage, Chen Mei said, back to business. Jia's an assassin at 19. That's not enough for Nightmare. I'll hold, Feng Jie heals, and we grind whatever we can and pray. His skeletons are strong, said Liu Jia. They're tough. Tough isn't damage. We turned a corner, and a mermaid elite warrior was standing in the passage. Level 21, enhanced elite, 2 meters of scale and muscle, the kind of thing a full 6-man party spends 90 seconds on with everybody working. 20 skeletons hit it at once. There was a sound like a car accident, and it fell over in pieces, and a kill notification went out to the whole party. Wu Hao was still in the middle of casting a buff. He stopped, looked at his own hands, and said, What just happened? Chen Mei stared at the corpse, then at me, then at the corpse. That was an enhanced elite. Yes. That took less than 3 seconds. Buffs, said Wu Hao. I haven't finished the buffs. Forget the buffs, said Chen Mei in a strangled voice, and keep up, and she started walking very fast after my skeletons. We went through the front half of that dungeon at a jog. Nothing survived 5 seconds. There were not many monsters. Mermaid Tears is not a dense dungeon. It is a long corridor with elites spaced out along it, and 20 skeletons met each one and dismantled it before anybody behind me had adjusted their grip. Chen Mei is a knight. Her entire function, the thing she has trained for since she was 12, is to stand at the front of a party and be hit so that other people are not. She spent that entire walk at the back with her shield on her arm and nothing whatsoever to do, and I watched her go through the whole thing in about 11 minutes. First, she kept trying to get in front. Then she stopped trying and started watching. Then she started watching my hands instead of the skeletons, which is when I knew she was actually good, because she had worked out inside 10 minutes that the skeletons are the visible part and I am the mechanism. Then, quietly, to nobody, she said, "Necromancer. That is a very impressive class." Behind her, Wu Hao said, "I still haven't finished the buffs," in a small voice, and Fang Jie told him to give it up. Then the passage ended in a cliff. 50 meters down, in a cave the size of a cathedral, there was a python. 30 meters long, a meter thick, scales black as oil and layered like plate armor, and it had already seen us. Mermaid Queen's pet snake, level 23, elite boss. It had the highest stats I had ever put a detection on. 5,500 agility, faster than my skeletons, with a coil that crushes and a spray that poisons. "I'll go tank it," Chen Mei said, already moving. "No need." 20 skeletons went over the edge. The python was better than I expected. It came off the floor like a whip and swatted half of them out of the air in the first 2 seconds, and its tail cleared another 4, and it moved through that cave so fast my skeletons were hitting where it had been. "It's too agile," said Chen Mei, gripping her sword. "What do we—" I put my palm out and let a red net fall over the entire cave. Slow curse. There is a sound it makes, a soft hum, and then a red shackle mark appears over the head of everything inside 100 meters, and the world for that thing simply stops being cooperative. The python's next strike came in at a crawl. 20 skeletons walked up onto it. "Is that a curse?" Chen Mei said. "You have curses?" "I'm a necromancer." "You're a summoner." "I'm both." It tried everything it had. It coiled 4 of my skeletons and squeezed until they made a sound like a ship trapped in ice, and every one of the 4 kept hacking at it from inside the coil the entire time, because they do not have lungs, and they do not have ribs that matter, and they do not stop. It sprayed venom until the cave was unbreathable, and Fang Jie had to put a barrier around the 4 of us on the ledge, and my skeletons stood in it and corroded and did not care. It went up the wall, which I had not expected, and dropped 30 meters onto a group of them, which was genuinely clever. It thrashed for 2 full minutes with a 100-meter curse sitting on top of it, and the curse never came off, because slow curse runs 20 minutes, and it had been on for 90 seconds. Then it stopped thrashing. Chen Mei's mouth moved. "That's it?" "That's it," I said, and jumped down. Past the cave, the smell changed completely. I noticed it before I saw anything. 2 hours of rotting fish and standing water, and then, between one step and the next, clean air with something floral in it. Then blue light, and then a palace. Not a cave decorated like a palace, an actual palace, with columns and steps and a courtyard and a fountain that was running, at the bottom of a mountain on an island that no country owns, in a dungeon that surfaces once a year. Liu Jia stopped talking, which I had not thought possible. "Somebody built that," she said. "Yes." "Who built that?" Nobody has ever answered that question for me. I have asked people since who ought to know. Mermaid Tears is not a constructed dungeon, and it is not a natural one, and there is a palace at the bottom of it with a fountain that has been running for however long fountains run when nobody is watching, and between us and its gates, 60 patrols of 3. Liu Jia counted them out loud and then stuck her tongue out. 180. "All enhanced elites," said Chen Mei. "Look at the armor." She had gone very quiet. In her experience, and she had a lot of it, you take 3 at a time, from a corner, carefully, over about 4 hours. "So many monsters," said Liu Jia. "What do we do?" I looked at 180 enhanced elite monsters standing between me and a door. I felt, and I am aware of how this sounds, delighted. Simple. 20 skeletons went out into the courtyard, and every patrol on that floor turned at once, and my skeletons ran a long, lazy circle through all of them, and came back with the entire garrison of the Mermaid Queen strung out behind them like a wedding train. Chen Mei's hair stood up. "What is he, Jian Yu? They're coming here." 60 meters out, my skeletons turned around and hit. Their skills went off at the same instant as the mermaid sergeants did. 180 tridents and 20 greatswords, red light against silver, and the collision lit that whole courtyard like a festival. One mermaid sergeant fell over. "Cover your ears," I said to Liu Jia. Oh! She clapped both hands to the sides of her head instantly, because Liu Jia is not slow. Chen Mei said, "Cover our what?" The chain went through 180 enhanced elites in about 6 seconds. When it stopped, Chen Mei was on one knee with her shield up over Fang Jie, and Wu Hao had fallen over, and the courtyard of the Mermaid Queen's palace was empty, and the experience notifications were coming in so fast that the party feed could not draw them. Liu Jia lowered her hands and said, with enormous satisfaction, "Told you." Then the palace gates opened. Blue light came out first, and it was beautiful, and then she came out of it, and she was also beautiful, and that is a weapon. The Mermaid Queen is 5 meters tall, and she does not look like a monster. That is the point. There was a moment where I felt the room tilt very slightly toward her, and I noticed the tilt and stepped on it. And beside me, Liu Jia had already started walking forward with her eyes gone soft and empty. I caught her collar. Chen Mei was walking too. Fang Jie shrieked, "Charm!" and threw clarity on all of us, and Liu Jia came back with a jolt and said, "What happened to me?" "She's got a passive charm," said Fang Jie, shaking. "You two got taken. Jian Yu and Wu Hao and I have the spirit to resist it." "That is terrifying," said Liu Jia. The queen looked at her dead garrison. Then she looked at my skeletons. Then she screamed. I have no better word. It was not sound, exactly. It was a physical event that came out of a beautiful face, and the wind of it blew every corpse in that courtyard away from us in all directions like leaves off a table. Which was clever. That was the moment I started respecting her, because she had watched what I did to her guards, and her very first action was to take the ammunition off the floor. "Fine," I said. I put the curse on her, and she slowed by half, and 20 skeletons went in, and this time it was not a formality. 5,000 strength on her side against 5,400 on mine, 6,000 constitution soaking everything, and her trident sweeping my front rank across the courtyard in arcs. Bones cracked. Several of them went down and did not get up quickly. Chen Mei saw it and stepped forward with her shield. "Wu Hao, buff us. I'm going in." "No need." I opened my hand. The wind went cold, and the light in that courtyard went out, and 88 more skeletons came up out of the floor. Chen Mei stopped with one foot in the air. "There are how many?" 98% of them had been in my pocket the entire time. Every fight on that island, every pull, every wall of bone, all of it had been done with 20, because 20 was enough, and it had never once occurred to anybody to ask what enough was a fraction of. The queen went under 108 skeletons like a swimmer under a wave. She fought for 3 minutes, and she fought well, and I have never forgotten how she did it. She used the giant wave first. Deep blue light and then a wall of water through a courtyard with no water in it, and it took half my skeletons off her body and threw them into the air, and they spun in it, and several of them came apart. Then, while they were falling, she used the crying skill. That one is not an attack, it is a sound, and it is the sound of a woman grieving, and it went into Liu Jia and Chen Mei and took both of them at once. Fang Jie threw clarity, and clarity failed, because a level 24 boss outranks a level 20 support, and the system is not sentimental about it. 2 of my 4 allies were standing in a courtyard with their eyes gone soft, walking slowly toward a 5-meter monster with a trident. I caught Liu Jia's collar. Fang Jie got both arms around Chen Mei and held on, and it did not matter at all, because the fight was never being conducted by any of us. I was not charmed, because I have more spirit than anything else about me, and my skeletons cannot be charmed, ever, by anything, because they have no feelings, and no pain, and no fear, and nothing whatsoever for a beautiful voice to reach. She wept at an army that does not have ears, and the army kept working. At 3 minutes, she went down. A silver longsword, a silver staff, and 1 mermaid's tear sitting on the floor of the courtyard, glowing like a drop of water with a light inside it. Liu Jia jumped straight up in the air with both fists over her head. "Trial complete!" Chen Mei picked the tear up with both hands like it might break and looked at it and then looked at me, and she had to work to get her voice level. "If you had not been here," she said, "none of us would have gotten off that beach. You kept me in the group." "Yes." "So," I checked the time, 1/2 an hour, entrance to boss. "Jia," I said, "do you have a cooldown amulet?" Liu Jia's whole face changed. She got it instantly, the way she got everything instantly, and her eyes went bright and narrow at the same time. "Of course I do," she said. We came out of the dungeon behind 10 skeletons, and the whole mountaintop turned around. "They're out." 1/2 an hour? That's nothing. They couldn't beat it. They bailed. Look at the bone things. Meat shields. That's all they are. The Sakura countryside was openly enjoying itself. Nobody on that summit believed a 5-person team had cleared Nightmare in 30 minutes, because nobody had ever done it in under 2 hours with a perfect party. So the only explanation available to them was that we had run away. Han Kai, from among his new teammates, said, "Lucky to be alive." Chen Mei counted heads on both sides, noticed nobody had gone in, and said quietly, "Be careful." "Don't worry," said Liu Jia, bouncing. "It's fine, we've got you." Wu Hao and Fang Jie went back to the Shenxia line. Liu Jia and I made a party of 2. Then, in front of about 50 people, she took out her cooldown amulet and used it. The dungeon lockout went to 0. We walked back in. How did they get back in? 2 people? 2 people can't do normal difficulty. That's a cooldown amulet. Where does a 19 get a cooldown amulet? She's burning charges. That's 10 uses on a thing you cannot buy anywhere. What a waste. Inside, Liu Jia's face was doing something I had not seen on it before. "You said you'd help me level," she said. "I didn't think you meant this week." "You promise something, you do it. Then you have to keep doing it," she said, walking backwards in front of me. "Not once. Repeat business. Say yes. Yes." 10 skeletons went down the corridor and did not stop to fight anything. They collected instead. That is a different job, and it is harder than killing, because a pull is a matter of timing. You have to be interesting enough to follow and fast enough not to be caught, in a corridor, for 400 meters, with the count going up behind you the whole way. By the time they reached the cliff, they had 30-odd mermaid elite warriors strung out behind them in a screaming column, and they went straight over the edge into the Python's cave without slowing down, with the entire front half of the dungeon in tow. Liu Jia ran up to the lip and looked down and said, "Oh, that's horrible," with total delight. We came out at the top of the cliff and looked down at a boss and 30 enhanced elites in one room. Slow curse. Everything in that cave got a red shackle over its head and stopped being fast. The skeletons turned around and killed the nearest elite, and I detonated it, and then I did not stop for 3 seconds. 10 corpse explosions in 3 seconds. I counted them afterwards from the notification stack. When it cleared, there were no monsters, there was no python, and there were rocks coming down off the cave ceiling. My experience jumped by more than the entire first run. Liu Jia's jumped by 700,000. 5 minutes, the whole front half. The last time it took us 40. "Okay," said Liu Jia in a slightly unsteady voice. "Okay, that's... yes." We did the courtyard the same way, except now I had learned my lesson about the queen and her housekeeping, and when the 180 were dead, I had my skeletons pick up a dozen corpses and carry them. The gates opened. The queen came out. Liu Jia immediately got behind me and shut her eyes. "If I don't look at her, she can't get me, right?" "Probably." "Great, great. I'm not looking." The queen screamed her housekeeping scream, and the wind took every corpse off the floor and scattered it into the dark, and she looked extremely pleased about that. My skeletons walked back in with the 12 they had been holding. She got 1 skill off. I think it was the wave. It did not finish. 2 minutes. Entrance to kill. The queen of that dungeon died without landing a blow, and a second mermaid's tear rolled across the floor. We walked out. Liu Jia used the amulet. We walked back in. Outside, per Chen Mei, the mountaintop had a small collective breakdown. They came out and went straight back in. That's not how you use an amulet. Is this what rich looks like? Third run, 8 minutes, 58 seconds. Liu Jia was timing it on her communicator by then and reported the number with genuine outrage because it was 30 seconds slower than she wanted. "We lost time on the cliff," she said, jogging. "You waited for the tail. You should have gone with what you had. The tail was 6 elites. "The tail was 6 elites that you did not need," said Liu Jia. "You had 90. 90 is a bigger bomb than any of them are worth." She was right. She had been in this dungeon for 40 minutes, and she had already found the same inefficiency Mei Ling found in the mine, from the opposite direction. Mei Ling told me to pull tighter, Liu Jia told me to pull less. I want to note that both of them were people I had known for under 2 weeks, and that neither of them could have done any part of what they were correcting. That is the thing about being the only one of something. There is nobody above you to learn from. The only teachers available are people who cannot do it and can see it. Somewhere in the middle of it, white light came up around her in the courtyard, and she yelled loud enough to echo, "20! I'm 20! Finally!" I had known Liu Jia since I was level 10 and she was level 19, and in all that time she had gone up exactly one level, and I had drawn a lot of conclusions about her work ethic that turned out to be correct. Third tier. We came out of the dungeon and stood there, and about 4 seconds later somebody on the Sakura side pointed and screamed. The vortex behind us shuddered, folded, and went out like a candle. The dungeon was gone. Mermaid Tier's dungeon closes when all 3 tiers are taken. That is the rule. Everybody on that mountaintop knew the rule. It's gone. That's impossible. It only closes when all 3. He went in 3 times. They cleared Nightmare 3 times? In an hour? Chen Mei stepped forward and did not deny anything. The tiers are in my hands, she said. The sound the Shenxia side made was not the sound the Sakura side made. They must not leave. They have the tiers. Take them back. Hand them over or nobody goes home. Both lines came up. And then the wind changed, and the clouds over the summit tore open, and 2 Shikigami came down out of them, with the Onmyoji standing on one. Up close, his level was a wall, 30 at least, in a trial where the team average is capped at 20, which meant Sakura Country had sent a legendary class professional 6 levels over the ceiling, and had solved that arithmetic by stacking their team with children who barely counted. It also explained how he had been on the mountaintop when the mountain was full and we were not. He had never had to climb it. He rides. That is what a Shikigami is. An Onmyoji does not fight. He writes something on a piece of paper, and then a thing that used to be a story stands up out of the air and fights on his behalf, and he sits on top of it with clean shoes. Hand over the mermaid's tears, he said, or you don't leave. Chen Mei's grip tightened on her shield. I put a flame in my palm before she could answer. Soulfire does not care what something is made of. It goes past the body entirely and burns the part that wants to keep existing. And I had spent 2 weeks learning that it works on anything that can be surprised. The flame appeared above the left Shikigami's head and went in. The scream that came out of that thing emptied the summit. It twisted, it folded in on itself, it came apart at the seams while its master shouted a stabilizing chant at it, and the Onmyoji's head snapped around and his face had changed completely. You want to die? A third one came out of the sky. 3 meters, armored, snake-headed, carrying an axe the size of a door. Qianlong Academy threw everything they had at it, and it did not notice. 20 professionals' worth of attacks landing on it like weather. Your attacks, said the Onmyoji, tickle my giant axe god. 5 skeletons went up to meet it. Berserk strike, 5 at once, at 5,400 strength. The giant axe god turned into green smoke about 2 meters off the ground and was gone before the smoke finished forming. So weak? I said, honestly surprised. Nobody on that mountaintop said anything. The Onmyoji, connected to what I had just deleted, went white and coughed blood down his own robes. I put another soulfire into the one that was still screaming, and 2 skeletons that had been standing quietly behind it the whole time cut it in half, and he took the second backlash on top of the first. He got his last Shikigami turned around and left, fast, and he did not look back, and the look he gave me on the way had fear in it, and I had never seen an adult look at me like that before. 10 skeletons walked out into the middle of the summit and stopped, side by side, glowing white-blue in the sea wind, soul flames burning steady, great swords hanging loose. Then they took 1 step toward the Sakura Country line. The Sakura Country line took 1 step back. The skeletons took another step. The first man broke and ran, and after the first one it is not a decision anymore, and about 40 professionals from a rival empire went down a mountain at a speed that would have been impressive under better circumstances. The Shenxia Empire team walked back down that mountain, laughing so hard some of them had to stop. Did you see them run? Scared off by 6 skeletons. Would you have stayed? He beat Nightmare 3 times. If we'd actually fought, they'd have been fertilizer. Running was the smart play. A lot of them looked at me while they said it, and none of them talked to me, and I heard the whispering perfectly well. Where is he from? Top Academy, has to be. Top Academy people don't do trials, they're too busy. Then who is he? He doesn't talk. He doesn't talk, and he killed a Shikigami in 1 move. Leave it alone. Back at the starting point, Chen Mei held up the quest stone and all 3 tiers. The Shenxia Tower's outline came up over the sea, put 1 beam of light down on her hands, and said, in a voice like a mountain, "Trial mission complete. Begin, return." Liu Jia arrived back at Qianlong Academy the color of old milk and lay down on a table. Never again, she said into the wood. Nearby trials only. Write it down. Then a man appeared standing in the air above the courtyard, and everybody shut up. Standing in the air is not a spell. At level 70, on your third job change, you get the sky, and that is true whether you are a war hero or a tailor, and it is the single cleanest line in the whole system. Fewer than one professional in 100 ever crosses it. Our dean, Liu Jia murmured. Liu Fan, he gave the speech. Analysis pending, results by communicator, and then the part that is always in these speeches. The point of a trial is not the result, it is the process. Enjoy the process. Come home alive. That matters more than winning. Same speech every year, Liu Jia said without lifting her head. Could they not write a new one? It's a good speech, said Chen Mei, and then more quietly, for you. You're not the one who needs the contribution points. Chen Mei split the loot 6 ways, and I split my 2 solo runs into the same pot, because we had gone in as a team, and Han Kai was not in that count, and I did not have to say anything about it. Liu Jia gave me her share on the grounds that her storage space was full, which is a lie so poor that I did not insult her by arguing. At the Imperial Exchange, I turned silver weapons and fish skins into 180,000 gold, and Liu Jia asked why I did not keep a weapon for myself, and I told her that staves and spellbooks do nothing for my skills. My class has the word mage in it somewhere, and does not care about a single thing mages carry. I have a suspicion it wants something of its own, and has not told me yet. Then save your gold, she said. Beginner scrolls, as many as you can, before your second job change. Learn every basic skill first. If you leave one unlearned, an intermediate scroll can roll into it, and an intermediate scroll costs 10 million. I had not known that. She knows 100 things like that, and gives them away like snacks. My communicator rang. Jian Yu, come to the Academic Affairs office. Yang Shen was sitting behind Director Fan's desk with his feet somewhere under it, and Director Fan, who runs the Academic Affairs office of the largest academy in the Shenxia Empire, was standing respectfully to one side of his own furniture. I had walked in expecting a clerk with a form. I watched the recording, said Yang Shen. You did well. I want to note what that means. There is no observation feed on a trial island. Which means somebody, at some point in the 6 hours since we got back, had rewound the Shenxia Tower and watched a mountaintop from the inside, and had done it because of me, and did not think that was worth mentioning. I did what I was there for. Do you know what a mermaid's tear is actually for? I did not. Nobody had said. 10 teams had crossed an ocean for 3 of them. When you take your second job change at 40, he said, there is a chance, a very slim one, roughly 1 in a million, of awakening a talent. Most professionals live their whole lives without one. A mermaid's tear raises that chance. I kept my face still, which took some doing because I had woken up with a talent at 18 and had told exactly one person in the world what it multiplied by. Yang Shen watched me not react and looked faintly disappointed, which I did not understand until much later. He had wanted to see the greed. He was checking. We calculated when and where Mermaid Island would surface this year, he said. So did Sakura Country, which we did not expect, and it nearly cost us the whole trial. It did not, because you were there. In the Shenxia Empire, offense is punished and merit is rewarded. He leaned back. Name it. I thought about it for 1 second. Help me find someone. Yang Shen started laughing. I knew you would say that. He waved a hand at Director Fan, who was already wearing the expression of a man who had lost a bet and enjoyed it. You already went to the office. Your sister, Jianhua, enrolled last year. At the start of this year, she joined Chuangshin Academy. Everybody who joins Chuangshin goes blank in the main system on the same day. That is all it means. I had spent 4 months building a case for the third thing Liu Jia refused to say out loud. She's in Chuangshin, I said. She is. I had spent 4 months on this. I had built a case and rehearsed the case, and the case had a shape, and the shape was that my sister had gone into a building and not come out, and it took him 11 words. Chuangshin is the first of the 3 top academies, and it is not close to the other 2. Qin Mei has aimed her entire life at it, and stood on a mountaintop and gave up a damage dealer for it. Liu Jia mentions it the way you mention a mountain range, as a feature of the landscape, not a place you go. And my sister, who left a house with a hole in the roof and 2 burners 18 months ago and got on a train with 1 bag, was already inside it. By the rules, said Yang Shen, I cannot tell you anything about Chuangshen Academy, not one word. He shrugged, and it was not an apologetic shrug. So if you have questions, join it and ask her yourself. Until you are inside, you will not see her. How do I join? He was already doing something on his communicator, because of course he was. Sent. And that was not your reward. That was information I was going to give you anyway. Ask for something else. A cooldown amulet. Director Fan made a small, strangled noise of triumph, and Yangshen slapped the desk and howled. Old Fan, was I wrong? Not by a word, sir. Not by a word. I stood there while two of the most senior men in the Shenxia Empire enjoyed having predicted me. Do you know what a cooldown amulet is worth? Said Yangshen, wiping his eye. A basic one is not for sale, not in the Imperial Exchange, not in ours. You cannot buy one with money. I know. Then here is how it works. Your national top scorer prize was already paid in full. We are square on that. Your work on this trial was real, but it does not buy an amulet. He held up one finger. I have a job. Do it, and I will get you one. What's the job? You need to be level 20 first. Ask Director Fan about leveling. He is the expert. He stood up. Contact me when you are 20. Then he was gone, and Director Fan finally got to sit in his own chair. He gave me 10 straight minutes on how to level. Solo dungeons, which are dangerous and which almost nobody can do. Elite fields in the wild, which are crowded and get people killed over territory. World bosses, which the great guilds own and whose respawn timers they guard like state secrets. None of it was useful to me. I listened to every word because a fact you cannot use today is a fact you have tomorrow, and I had not known until that morning that there are unclaimed monster zones sitting in the gaps between countries. At the 10-minute mark, he stopped and looked at me expectantly. I did not say anything because he had not asked a question. BS. I waited. A clock somewhere in that office ticked 11 times, and I counted them because there was nothing else to do. Divine Yang was right about you, said Director Fan, giving up. You really do not talk. Fine. Give me your card. I will process your paperwork. He handed me a teleport stone for the Academy's dungeon hall, which cost 1,000 points, which he took out of my card without asking. That is the Academy. Everything is a transaction. There is no free lunch, and they will happily explain that to you while charging you for the explanation. Outside, I opened the file Yangshen had sent. Requirements for entry, Chuangshen Academy. 1. Level 30 or above. I stopped there for a while. My sister enrolled at 16, the same as everybody. She joined Chuangshen 3 or 4 months later, which means Manhwa went from 16 to 30 in about 100 days, and I had thought I was fast, and I had just spent 2 weeks doing something no one in the province had ever done, and the number sitting on my screen was my little idea of a miracle, with somebody else's name already on it. Sister, you are over 30. 2. Clear the level 30 dungeon called Abyss Front. Difficulty, Hell. Hell, not Nightmare. Hell is where 12-man raids go to become 9-man raids, and the file did not say bring a team, and I did not intend to. 3. 1,000 contribution points, which you cannot buy and cannot farm, and only get by doing things the Academy needs doing. 3 lines, none of them simple. Level 30 is 13 levels above where I was standing, and levels get slower, and everybody knows they get slower. A hell difficulty dungeon called Abyss Front, which the file describes in 1 sentence and does not describe at all, and which is rated for a full raid of people twice my level. And 1,000 contribution points, which cannot be bought with money or with Academy points, which the Academy hands out only for work it wants doing, and which I had exactly none of, because I had been a student there for 4 days. I read those 3 lines about 6 times standing in that corridor, and then I noticed the thing that actually mattered about them, which is that they were not a wall, they were a price. The Academy had written down in 3 lines exactly what my sister is worth, and then handed me the invoice. I stood in a corridor in the largest academy in the Shenxia Empire and thought about the last 2 weeks. And I am not a sentimental person, so I will keep this short. 2 weeks ago, I was a boy in a house with a hole in the roof, and 600 people I had gone to school with slid up the bleachers away from me because a rusty skeleton with 15 in every column had frightened them. Today, the strongest man in the empire knocked on that house's door. My name is on a national board, and 40 professionals from a rival country ran down a mountain because 6 of my skeletons took a step forward. And somewhere behind a wall in this same academy is the only family I have left, priced at exactly 3 things I do not have yet. I am going to get all 3. The only detail I have not mentioned, because I have been putting it off, is what happens after that. Because 100 kids on a black plane heard a thing in a blood moon lose everything it had come to take and go quiet and get almost friendly at the very end. Your name is Jan Yu. I will remember you. When you come to the abyss, I will treat you well. I did not answer it then, and I am not going to answer it now. I have a level to reach, a hell dungeon to walk into alone, and 1,000 contribution points to earn. But I want to be clear about one thing, since it is going to matter later. It said when, not if.